Okay, so it looks like it's going live, and then Garland, I'm gonna check your YouTube channel just to see if it's going live on yours. Alrighty. Yep, there it goes. Okay, cool. So, oh, yep, and there's comments. Okay, cool. Okay, so to start it off, I don't know if you guys have any specific place you want to start, but I did have something I wanted to kind of throw out there. Just okay, so yeah, I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. So, I in the comments of your videos, I've had some interactions with people, and I just wanted to make something clear because I've made a comment a couple times about how veganism can't be debunked, and the reason I say that is because, like in my mind, veganism is this idea of extending moral consideration to animals. So when it comes to crop deaths, if we were to find that that more animals were harmed and killed and whatnot from what we do with crops, then I would personally, depending on the level of it, I would view the vegan approach to be getting away from that. So there is a hypothetical world where the more vegan thing to do would be to be a human carnivore and eat only animals if that caused less harm and death and also was good for our health. So that's what I mean by that when I say there's nothing to me that can debunk veganism. It would just be whatever the best choice ends up being after I'm convinced. I would call that veganism.
Yeah, I think what I would say about that is that you're coming up with your own definition of veganism kind of as you go along, and uh, not everyone is aware of you and your viewpoints. So when they talk about veganism being something that's debunkable, and that's what I mean when I say that, is that we're talking about mainstream veganism. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say mainstream, I mean when you look at, say, the top five vegan influencers, um, that I think is what most people think of when they think of veganism. Most people who know vegans, um, the minority seems to be those who kind of keep it to themselves. Um, there's a majority that, for at least initially, are very outspoken. They're they speak down to people. They try to guilt them about what they're eating. They're kind of up on a soapbox, proselytizing about the religion. And I mean, to be honest, it is a religion. I've had many vegans admit that to me, um, which is okay. Um, I think it's good to go ahead and acknowledge that that's what it is. As far as it being debunkable, uh, veganism, the mainstream vegans will claim that, I've been through, I've been doing this for years now, and really, what drives me are two things. One is I actually have a background as a professional sports nutritionist, so I know for a fact that a plant-based diet will not cover all nutritional needs. Yes, there are supplements that can be taken, but it's not just B12. And the process of manufacturing those supplements is very harmful to the environment that the animals live in. And while you have claimed again and again that your concern isn't with the environment, it's with the animals, you're talking about farm animals. The wild animals live in the environment. So when you damage the environment, you kill animals. For instance, the primary pollutant that's causing oceanic dead zones, and we've got about 100,000 square miles of dead zones around the world now. The major contributor to that is nitrogen, and the majority of that nitrogen is coming from cropland. And so that is a category of crop deaths. And so you've got 100,000 square miles of three-dimensional space, because it's not just square miles, because we're talking about ocean area, and the ocean is deep. So with each inch that you move down in the ocean, you've got another layer of death. And I have been, I am working on I told you I'm actually working with some other people on a research paper that we plan to publish. And I am in the process of calculating the deaths, which is difficult because the animals that are killed in the ocean due to the nitrogen from the crop fields is currently measured in weight. And so, it's not real easy just to go out there and say, come to a conclusion on the numbers. It's difficult. But as I was saying, is that the first thing that drives me is nutrition. I told you before that I've got a brother that was a younger brother born with a horrible birth defect by the name of spina bifida. That's not my brother's name. That's the name of the birth defect. He has been in pain and misery and suffering his entire life, and it continues. And he's 51 years old now, and it will continue until he's gone. He will always be suffering, and it was brought about because and I'm not blaming my mother. I'm not putting the blame on her, because she didn't know any better, but she was on a plant-based diet when she was pregnant with him. And we know now that vegans are commonly deficient in the nutrients whose deficiencies lead to that birth defect in individuals who have a genetic propensity to succumbing to the downside of having those deficiencies. So I'm very passionate about the fact, and I am offended whenever vegans who don't have a background in nutrition will proclaim that they're not nutritionists and don't know anything about nutrition. But they'll appeal to authority and say, well, there's these scientists that are saying that we can get by on a plant-based diet. Well, there's a lot of scientists that counter that also. So that's not really a legitimate statement. So first thing is nutrition. Second thing is the animals. Because as I told you in an email, I don't know if you bothered to read it, but I started working in the livestock agriculture at the age of 5, helping grown men out there working cattle, goats, sheep. And then at the age of 12, I started working in crop agriculture, started in cotton, chopping cotton, which is actually working the fields with a hoe, chopping the weeds around the cotton plants before they started using all these pesticides. That was the organic way of doing it, just out there manually cutting the weeds. And I've worked with the corn industry. I've worked with the wheat industry. I've worked with the hay industry, the alfalfa industry. And I know from experience, and also looking at the estimates and the poundages, that crop agriculture is more deadly, kills more animals, causes more animal suffering than the entire livestock industry globally.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
So one thing I wanted to say is I lost their name. Happy Valley Free Range Farm says that I'm not paying attention, and I've been told this before or something. And I think it's because they saw me looking down. I have a little notepad that I take notes during conversations, and so I was paying attention. Michael, I'm curious. I want to ask you a question based off something Garland said, but then after that, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on everything Garland just said. But when it comes to a situation like we don't have to specifically talk about his brother, but if somebody has something like the spina bifida, like his brother, if the average doctor is recommending eating animal products, would you, as a vegan, think that in that case that person should to be healthier? Because I know some vegans feel like even if it was for health, that humans should just not touch animals. And then if we have something where we need animal products, that's just tough luck. You're out. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. All right. I'll answer your question quickly, and maybe I'll just give my take on the whole thing because I have a slightly different take than Carson. I think we mostly agree on most things, but we have we approach it from a slightly different angle. So apologies, Garland, because you're going to be the conversation. You might be responding to me in a certain way that wouldn't be addressing Carson's position. I know it's kind of awkward when there's like you're addressing two different perspectives, but that's just the reality of a three-way conversation, I guess. So your question was around like if there was a severe like let's just call it a significant health improvement that could be caused by inflicting some harm or rights violations against animals, would that be acceptable under my view? Yes. Yes, it would. So maybe I'll just sort of explain how I view this. It starts with, so like my underlying moral system is I'm a threshold deontologist. Garland, do you know what that is?
You're worried about rights violations, correct?
Well, just specifically like threshold deontology as opposed to like utilitarianism or deontology or something.
Explain
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. So deontology is like rules-based morality. So it's like it's always wrong to kill no matter what. It's always wrong to steal or whatever rules you have. That's like deontology is like rules are your guiding principle for what's right and what's wrong. Utilitarianism is like utilities. Greatest good for the greatest number, or you might have like only suffering matters, but it's still a utility-based moral system. So it's a moral system based around minimizing suffering or increasing pleasure or some combination of those things. It's just a category of a moral system. Mine is threshold deontology. So it's like I apply those rules. So it's like I never want to use the word negative rights, and that's a word that I use as well. I don't want to inflict negative rights violations, and the relevant group that I don't want to do that.
What is a negative rights violation versus a positive rights violation?
Yep, for sure. So negative right is like a freedom from something. It's like from being harmed, from being killed, from being lied to, even potentially. Not that I would really value that, as opposed to freedom to drive or to vote or to have like bear arms or something like that. Yeah. So just,
okay. I understand now. I understand.
Yeah. Okay. So the threshold deontology is just like I start with those rules, and then if there's a sufficient like utility, like offsetting the rule. So like if I would kill one person to save like 1 million people or something. I would break that rule if the utility gain crossed my threshold. And the utility gain is primarily for me measured in negative rights violations. So those are like that's the most relevant part of what makes up the utility.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is kind of the way that you rationalize dismissing crop deaths, correct?
Well, I'm getting there. So I'm just saying kind of where I'm starting from for how I think about like what's right and what's wrong. So does that make sense from like an underlying moral system so far?
I mean, I've definitely dealt with many vegans that come from that perspective. What the specific label that you guys give yourselves is what you're educating me on. The perspective or the angle, I certainly understand. I've dealt with it. I don't think that I certainly will illustrate today that perspective does not hold water.
Well, I haven't said my perspective regarding crop deaths yet. All I've said is like the moral framework that I'm using to evaluate any moral question.
Sure.
So, yeah. Okay. So yeah, and fair enough. If you want to try to tell me that the vegan diet is less consistent with my moral system, and you have something you want to say or show me to convince me of that, that's definitely why I'm here. So we can go a couple of different ways. That I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for mine. I would be really curious if you guys would share yours, just so we're all on the same page with speaking to each other. And I also want to address some of the things you said so far, Garland. But I'd be happy to do that after, if you guys want to share what your kind of moral system is or how you evaluate what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, I'll just throw out real quick that mine's very similar to yours. I it's slightly off. I mean, when it comes to animals, it's a lot of it's going to come down to the level of suffering, but I think that's part of the threshold. So I would say basically what you said is very similar to my own. So yeah, what about you, Garland?
Mine is, I think that I think human beings, I do think that human beings are special. You know, we're certainly different. But as far as our physical bodies are animals. And like animals, we are driven to further the species, so to speak. Every species of animal out there is driven to pass on its genetic heritage to another generation. And I hear you, Carson, often speaking to that, and that your number one priority is health. Your number one priority is your family, and then the third in line is the human race, because you value humans over animals, and then after humans comes animals.
Correct.
And I'm really that way myself, in that I think that first of all, my own personal, I've got to take, if I don't take care of myself and I let myself deteriorate, then I can't take care of my family. So I've got to take care of myself, but um, I'm doing that because my family is a priority. So I want to make sure that my family is healthy and safe and prosperous. And part of my motivation there is so that my children can grow up and be healthy and live and pass on the family heritage. My genetic information will live on in future generations, hopefully. Um, so I think a lot of it comes from, I've actually have a kinesiology degree with a biology minor. My hobby is reading and studying science and ecology and these types of things. From my biology research, I know for a fact that all animals are number one, they're trying to pass on their own genetic material, and then second to that is their immediate uh, relatives. A wild deer, number one, a mama deer will take on a wolf or a pack of wolves trying to protect its baby. It's not necessarily going to do that for some other doe's baby. So it's trying to take care of its own. But next to that, you've got examples of species that will, I've seen the video of the water buffalo, the whole herd of water buffalo coming to the aid of another water buffalo and fighting off the lions. So I think that all species, with the exception of vegans within the human species, all species are to some degree speciesist, because they are part of a genetic pool, and there's some type of common instinct or drive that causes those animals to value their own species above other species. You don't see grasshoppers hanging out with butterflies. You don't see, every species out there has a draw to its own kind and is driven to pass on its genetic heritage. And so I think that it's natural for humans to number one, value themselves and their own family, number one. And then, most people do value animals. You talk about, I know vegans talk about, whenever we talk about crop deaths, they talk a lot about intent.
Before we get into that, Garland, do you mind if I just ask you a question?
Sure.
You can just earmark the intent thing, because I'm happy to talk about that too. But I just want to make sure I'm understanding your view. So it sounds like it's sort of evolutionarily driven. That's how you're explaining your value system, and it comes down to like you justifying valuing humans above animals because you're more closely genetically related, and you can kind of trace that back to our evolutionary history.
Well, I'm agnostic. I understand the theory of evolution. I know that there's people watching that are very religious, and they don't believe in evolution. They just think that we were created. So I don't think that not that I'm just trying to be diplomatic, but I don't think that there has to be that evolution actually has to be part of the definition. I think evolution aside, we all do possess our own genetic code, and we do have a drive, and we make it a priority to pass on and protect that genetic information.
So one thing I'll just challenge you on with a view like that, I'm just curious how you'd respond to this, is like, it seems to me that sort of justification would lead to things like valuing certain humans who are more genetically related to you. So like your own race, for example, than other humans who are less. And if you're building a moral system and building laws kind of behind that moral system around how to treat other people and other beings, wouldn't that lead to sort of different treatment of humans under your view?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to. I mean, there could be someone that shares that same general perspective that might partition things so that they would fall into place in that fashion. But me, for instance, I'm married to a woman from Guadalajara, Mexico. She's 50% Mayan, so I can give you myself as an example that the answer to the question is no. That just because I value the human race doesn't mean that I'm going to build up walls of prejudices against members of the human race that happen to be come from a different historical geographical region.
I guess I'm just curious, why would you extend it to humans, and why do you draw a line at species instead of just extending it further to animals as well?
I don't think that there is any animal out in the world, except for, like I said, except for the vegans among the human race that do that. I think that all animals, as I explained, they have a preference for associating and procreating and protecting members of their own species. That's something that I don't think you could point to any species out there and say, well, here's an example of a species that puts all species on the same priority level. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a species is kind of it's an interesting term, because what we have sort of a clear idea what we mean by a species. But when we actually look at what it is, it's essentially there's like this fuzzy line in between kind of us and the the previous evolutionary form of what humans were, and where you take one from like a human, I don't know what it was, if anyone knows you can say it, homo erectus or something or other. It's like the point
Garland
of
might be gone. Are you there, Garland? But
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah.
so Neanderthal would have been before us, and then Homo
Yeah, I think you're
habilis,
on a.
and
I think
then
Neanderthal was in a different evolutionary tree than us. But anyway,
oh
the
yeah.
point being, like, species aren't like hard categories. They're like things that we created to, like, we created the term for species to kind of put things into buckets, because that's just what people like to do. We like to categorize things, and so we've created all of these species that we call things. But like, evolutionarily speaking, it was just a bunch of fuzzy lines between one thing and another that were made up of many mutations and many millions and billions of years of very small changes in an environment where certain traits were selected for. So like, it seems weird to value species is my point, because it's like, it's just a category that we created. And it's like, if your rationale for valuing proliferation of your genes, and therefore valuing other beings who have similar genes, you would, in the same way that an animal is further away from you, also other humans are further away from you. So it's like, why do you draw the line somewhere?
Okay.
Before you answer that real quick, I want to tag team with you against Michael. Michael, I'm just curious because I believe we've talked about the saving a human or a dog in a burning building, and you choose the human. Can you help me understand your own personal separation from, like, if it was saving a Homo sapien versus Homo erectus or Homo habilis? Because it seems like the closer to human species you would prefer over the animals. So am I misunderstanding something, Michael?
Yeah, not misunderstanding, but I think that if there was a similar non-human species, like, just assume there was aliens living with us that had a totally different genetic makeup or something, but
Mm-hmm.
equally like social, I could talk to them and, hang out with them and go on hikes and, sleep in the backcountry and stuff. Like, I think I would value that species of alien equal to humans. I wouldn't inherently value humans over the very human-like aliens, for example.
Okay, I might have missed it if Garland feels different than that, because
Maybe not them.
I thought he felt about the same way I do, where I value humans or anything like it, anything we can rationalize with, or that seems to be something like us first, because of that connection, and then everything else on a moral level afterwards.
The reason I differentiated, I'll let Garland answer, but the reason I differentiated, or I thought that was a differentiator, is because Garland said that he thought the basis for why he valued humans was because of sort of his agnostic position on the likelihood of sort of genetic similarities. So there's like an evolutionary basis for why he values humans. But Garland, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Okay. Two things, I guess. The first thing I would say is, it doesn't sound like you have a very in-depth background in biology and genetics. For instance, you can't breed, a horse and a dog becoming romantic, so to speak. They cannot procreate. A dog is not going to mount a mare and create a half dog, half horse. You're not going to see a species, or you're not going to see an animal that's half fish and half goat. So there actually is speciesization out there. We gave it a word, yeah, we gave it a name. We assigned a name to something that exists, and that is that we cannot. There's
Breed.
there a chicken and a duckbill
Yeah.
platypus
What I
are
meant
not
by
going. Okay.
yeah, what,
Yes, I understand. You're saying that there's some common genetic code that the chicken has that maybe
no.
the fish also
Well,
has.
that is true. I wasn't saying that though. What I was saying is like there's a like every new child of a mother is part of its mother's species, right? But eventually, enough of that happens enough times, and there's a new species. That's what I meant by there's like a blurred line in the middle, where it's like every generation can breed with the previous generation, but eventually that stacks up enough over time where now the 7,000th
Okay.
generation can't breed. That's
Right, but I think the problem with that is that a human being from the year 500,000 BC is not going to be copulating with a human from 2023 AD, are they?
no,
Right.
but
So you're talking about two completely different times, and time exists as far as our experience is. So you can't. I mean, if you're going to bring up evolution, then you have to. Um, while yes, that in the theory of evolution that there's this gradual change that it's not like one generation gives birth to a completely different species,
right.
but over time there would be enough changes eventually so that they would not be able to copulate and procreate. So similar to the donkey is very similar genetically to the horse. In fact, they're so similar that they can actually copulate and procreate, but the offspring will not be a horse or a donkey, it will be a mule, and the mule will be sterile. You cannot breed two mules together and have a baby mule.
Right.
And that's because the difference between a donkey and a horse is so different that the offspring are not cannot reproduce. So there's lots of genetic research that you're not really inviting into your algorithm.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. I was just the species line just seemed arbitrary since species is a category that we create, and really what we're looking at is common ancestry in a continuum. And so it's like you're cutting it off at a certain point. I don't care that much. I'm just kind of curious what like your answer to the question. So
Okay, well, I think I answered that question. I think what it is that um, you're saying that we made up this different species.
yeah,
I'm saying that no, the different species existed and we gave it a name. Yes, we do that.
well,
We work with language. But let me tell you what my second concern is with your perspective is that what would prevent, because you've got, let's say, a male dog. Have you ever seen a male dog mount someone and hump them?
sure.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily be. Um, let's say it was a female human that was being mounted. What if she cooperated with that? What if she actually went ahead and pulled
Mm-hmm.
down her britches and would that be okay in your worldview because there's no such thing as species? In other words, are you saying that bestiality should be allowed because there's no such thing as species?
Okay. This is very irrelevant. I didn't say there's no such thing as species. I said it's a category that we created. The same as like gender. It's like it's a category we created to talk about different.
We gave something that just like the Earth. We call it the Earth, right? It's a planet. We call it the Earth. It's just us.
Yeah, planet.
It's
That's
what
actually a great
humans do.
example. is like planet. What rock formations are we going to call planets, and which rock formations that are out in space that are orbiting a sun are we going to call what's the word? It's like pseudo planets or something. There's a word for it. And then which ones are we just going to call like random objects in the Kuiper Belt that aren't
Yeah.
planets?
See, we wouldn't, you and I wouldn't be able to communicate right now if we didn't have language. And what we do is we create words to create labels so that we can assign those labels to certain things in our world so that we can communicate to each other. Just
Yeah.
like what was the name that you gave your philosophy?
Yeah. Threshold deontology.
Yeah, same thing. You know, human beings assigned that name to that philosophy. So the same thing that you're doing with species, someone could do that with this label that you've given your philosophy. And why do you have that label? Because we human beings work with language. And what you're doing is you're saying, why are you using language to describe something that exists? Because that's what humans do.
Can I hop in here and ask a quick question that might actually lead to this might help lead to what maybe Michael's asking for. If there was an island that we knew existed that humans hadn't been to yet, and then it turned out that a bunch of chimpanzees lived there, but these chimpanzees, unlike all the rest, can talk and rationalize, but they're chimpanzees. They look just like chimpanzees. We wouldn't classify them as humans, but they're primates just like us. But anyways, let's say they travel to the US and Canada and they're nice. They're not like wild, and they can rationalize with us and live amongst us, but they look just like chimps, and we call them the species chimp, but they can learn our language and agree to our laws. Would you say that you would value them similarly to humans?
Well, not similarly might not be the right word, but I would slip them now in between humans and the rest of the animal world, as long as they were, not out to destroy mankind. If they were a friendly
Mm-hmm.
species that were an intelligent species, then they would fit between the human species and the rest of the animal kingdom. But they would be,
Mm,
me being a human, I would have to put myself and my species above them. And that's what I'm
okay.
saying is that I don't think that a vegan would be able to point to any species, any known species out there, and say, well, here's an example of a species that does not look at the world uh, through a speciesist lens,
Yeah.
and
Well,
they value all species the same. And that's there is again, the
I
vegans,
mean, no other species
humans
that
are
we
the
know that,
only ones that do that.
yeah, but no other species is capable of like higher level thinking and reasoning and like even discussing morality. So it's irrelevant to point to other species to say that they lack this ability. Can you flip the screen on, Carson, there real quick?
Yeah.
Because I feel like my point, I just want to clear up what I mean, because I feel like maybe I didn't do a good job explaining. I'm not trying to make an argument that because species, like it's a category that anything goes. Somebody said that in the comments. Like my entire point is this is a blurred, like from this guy to this guy, evolutionarily speaking, it's a blurred line. Like if each of these is like a generation, like this one can breed with 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 this one, and so forth, but this one can't breed with this one. What we do when we create a species is we look at like genealogy, a bunch of stuff that I don't understand, and we say like, okay, look, we're going to call this one species and we're going to call this another species. There's like some gray zone probably in the middle where it's really tough to tell which species it is, but like that's what we mean by species, is creating these categories. And it's
Actually,
hard.
it's not. Actually, it's not. You look up the definition of species, and you'll find certain criteria. one of the definitions, a part of the definition of a species is that species is able to copulate and procreate with another individual from that genetic pool.
Uh-huh.
And so what you're saying is that you're saying over time, one species could morph into another species. So if you go back in, let's
Yeah.
say a rabbit, a cottontail rabbit from 2023 wouldn't be able to necessarily copulate and procreate with a rabbit or its ancestor from 10 million years ago,
Uh-huh.
right? But you can't point to any animal that's giving birth to a new species. So what you're doing is
that doesn't address what I'm saying at all. Like, why are you saying these things?
because part of the definition of species is that they can copulate and procreate
Yeah.
and give birth to an offspring that can copulate and procreate.
Yeah. I agree with that. What is different about that than what I'm saying though?
I think what you're saying is that since there's this gradual change over time via the theory of evolution, where one species on one day, 10 million years later, might be so genetically different that it wouldn't be able to procreate with a member from the ancestral past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I mean, if that's what's driving you, and you think that because of that, there should be no priority for one's own species, then that's you'll have to deal with the consequences of that, because that's really what
I'm doing.
I think that does actually end up with people like you heard about that guy, the sexy vegan, where he was trying to have sex with his dog. He ended up going to jail for it.
Okay.
So I think when you when you try to say that all species are the same, you open the door to what we've labeled bestiality. So I don't think that you want to go there.
I'm not saying that all species are the same. I'm just saying that the line between species is not like a hard line. Like if you took, like let's say we drew the box for species here and here. Like it is true that this version, like this thing, would be able to breed with this thing, even though they're different species.
Yes, I understand. How does this?
Well, yeah, I'll explain that.
So relevant.
This is relevant because you said so we'll say that this one is you here, or humans, right? Sorry for I'm changing what the drawings mean, but so you're saying that you value
actually looks a lot like me.
I can sell this to you as an NFT after if you like, but so you're saying that I value everything in this red box. And it just seems arbitrary to me that you would value like this one, but not this one. That's my point. Is like species seems like sort of an arbitrary, like irrelevant. Like I don't see how that can be the basis for differential moral treatment. Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay.
Where would I find the one that you pointed back to?
Yeah, number one here.
Yeah, not the Garland Farm human, but the other one from how many years back is that?
Oh, this one here? Like, so let's call this like pre-Garland. It doesn't matter.
No, at least give me some type of
like
span.
Certain, like,
I mean, if it's 10 years, of course.
Of generations such that that Garland.
No, I'm asking for an actual number. I want to know how many years back that might represent.
Well, I'm not sure what it would be with humans, but like
you don't have to be completely accurate, but give me a ballpark number of how many years back that might be.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give that number in 1 second. And I'm going to qualify it by saying the relevant information is that it's far enough back such that you wouldn't be able to breed with it. But let's call it 20 million years.
20 million years. Okay. Okay, so where would I find one of those organisms in today's world?
Well, you might not, but this is a hypothetical.
Right. But you said that this hypothetical was relevant to my present worldview.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical challenging your worldview.
Right. So if my worldview is that in today's world, the species that exist on this planet, I value human beings higher than all of the other species. And so you're talking about a species that doesn't exist today.
Well, yeah, for sure. So you're saying I value just these things here, and
No, I didn't say that. That's
and
not what I said.
oh,
Well,
I didn't
hold
say
on.
I
Let me.
value
I just want to hop in real
just
quick,
those
Michael.
things.
Michael, does it change it at all that he said that he values humans, and then if we had the hypothetical chimps that came in, he would value those more than all the other animals, but less than humans. And then we could probably he could probably rank a lot of different animals what he might value, like a pig more than a snail or something. Does this affect your thoughts on it?
maybe like, can you answer the question, Garland, about the alien species? Like, let's say they were just equal to humans in every way, other than their genetic makeup.
I think I did.
Oh,
Didn't I?
sorry, I missed it. What was the answer?
Carson, didn't I answer that?
I can't remember, but would your answer be kind of like the chimp, where you'd say since it's so close to humans, you value it more than other animals, but not as much as humans?
Yeah, as long as they're, let's say they were just as intelligent, if not more intelligent than human beings, but they were hostile to human beings,
Yeah,
then
not
no, I
hostile.
would not value them. But if they were friendly and they valued humans, then I would slip them in right in with the intelligent chimps that Carson was talking about. They would be, because they have a different genealogical history. They did not come from the same tree branch from which I came, and you and Carson. We all came from the human background, and so they have a different genetic heritage than we as humans have. And just like all members of all species, with the one exception being vegans among the humans, all other members of all species value their own species above all others.
Yeah, well, I mean, all other species, as I said, don't participate in any sort of moral like discussion or contemplation. But yeah,
Well,
all right,
but
okay.
you're giving me. We're talking about a hypothetical where you gave me an alien species
Mm-hmm,
that's got a completely different genetic heritage,
mm-hmm.
and 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 their genetic heritage and their genetic future has absolutely nothing to do with my natural drive to pass on my genetic heritage and have that genetic heritage be passed down from generation to generation to generation in the future.
Right, and so this is why this is relevant. Is like, so the if we look at this as the humans that are alive today, there is genetic differences that exist within us, and so it's like, if, like, let's say the Sentinelese, an island that is like very removed from all civilization, and they just like breed amongst themselves, and we don't interbreed with them. If that situation is left alone for long enough, it might be the case that you would not be able to breed with one of them, and as such, your genetic future would not be able to be, realized with them or whatever. Like, would you want a moral system and like the laws that are built behind it to favor like your half of the of like what humans, like the different branches of humans, the Sentinelese and the non-Sentinelese?
Well, I've already explained that I put all human beings in the same partition, and you're trying to convince me to take that partition and put partitions in that. And for like the third or fourth time, I'm telling you that I refuse to do that, Michael. Uh, I'm not going to differentiate myself from Africans or Mexicans or the Japanese. To me, the entire human race is in one category. And no matter how many times you try to get me to compartmentalize the human race, I'm not going to do that because that is not where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I'll just say that, like, I believe that similar things were said with other groups of humans that were persecuted. It's probably the wrong word, but were like rights violations were committed against them in the past. Like,
do you know anything about the Irish and the human rights violations
a
against the
very
Irish?
small amount, but yeah, go ahead
Okay.
if you want.
They were victims of slavery. I have a lot of Irish genetic heritage, so no, I'm not for rights violations against uh, any any
Yeah.
segment
But my
of the
point is
human.
that in the same way that you're saying, well, I just include all humans. Like, of course, like all humans. I'm never going to break that down. In the past, people have said, well, yeah, all whites, like all whites. Like, I would never change that. This is all whites matter. Like, I'm just saying it's a similar sort of, to me, seemingly arbitrary grouping that doesn't, like, I value sentience, so that's the way I group things, which kind of makes sense to me. If you're using something like species, it just sounds like another version of these, like race, like by race or by
Can
gender or by whatever.
Can
Yeah.
I hop? I want to hop in one more time because I want to answer the question as if you were asking me. Because I'm wondering if Garland would feel similar to how I do. If you had an alien species that was similar to us, or these chimps I was talking about, or the islanders you were talking about, anybody that can communicate with us and rationalize and be civil with us, if they came to the society I lived in and we had room for them, I would want everybody that was capable of following laws to be treated equally. And then the treatment of animals that can't communicate with us, that aren't intelligent enough, I would want to extend them moral consideration in the same sense that, like, it's probably illegal to stab a dog for fun. But I wouldn't factor them into how the chimps and the aliens and us humans all are able to look at the laws and abide by each other's laws. Like, a dog might bite you on accident, but so they're not agreeing to this thing. So that's kind of that's where I draw the line. I don't, JD, do you kind of draw the line in that sense where if we had enough room for the chimps and aliens, could they live amongst us if they followed our laws?
Uh, sure, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
I just found that response funny.
Well, Michael, does that help anything? Because you have a separation there too, right? Where the laws affect us a certain way, and we communicate and agree with each other. But the thing that you extend to dogs and also pigs and cows, that's separate, right? Like, you would put that on a different level, not connected with the beings that can communicate.
Yes. So there, yeah. I mean, if your question is like, why do I value certain beings more than other beings? Because I do. I would value, like, Carson or Garland more than I would value, like, a snake that I see on the ground or something. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which, like, I don't know if we necessarily want to get into the specifics of that, but it would be a bunch of a set of traits that would have to do with, like, potential quality of life, like the length of life, the amount of sentience, the amount of ability to experience good things and bad things, and, like, just like a lot of things. I could probably list them out. So yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to just kind of flag this as maybe a point of disagreement. It was less about, like, trying to argue and more just I just wanted to, well, no, I did want to challenge you on the fact that I thought it was arbitrary, but we can move on to a different topic if you guys want.
Okay, yeah, I would. Was there anything with the initial thing you were talking about? I think me and Michael both agreed with you, Garland, on the situation with your brother. I mean, depending on
Right.
what we figure out about a certain disease and what we can find out by studies in the future, that we would value the human over the animal. So we respect that part. Was there anything in that beginning part you said that you wanted reacted to, or should we jump to crop deaths?
I guess we can jump to crop deaths. I mean, I wish that Michael and I could iron out our differences on this. I think that actually what we'll have to leave it up to is the audience. They'll have to make up their own mind.
Oh,
Who's
I don't mind if you guys want to finish ironing out. The audience seems to be asking for more crop deaths talk, but
Yeah.
I think some people are fascinated by figuring out this difference. So, what do you guys want to do?
Well, I'm cool with either. There's a few things as well that Garland said in the opening that I wanted to comment on as well. But if we want to skip over that too, that's fine.
no? Go ahead and say what you need to say, Michael.
Okay, yeah, cool. So I was just jotting down a couple of notes. Like one of the you just mentioned a few of the reasons that you cared about talking about this. You mentioned the story with your brother, and that you said something like plant-based diet won't cover nutritional needs, and vegans are commonly deficient. So if that was the case, and you saw that there was like health outcome data that sort of went in the opposite direction of that, and you saw a sufficient amount that convinced you, would you change your mind on that?
Well, first of all, I've seen the outcome data with my brother, so I've watched him suffer for 50 years now, and so I've got that as a very prominent anecdote that's right there in my face all the time. So, in addition to that, um, it's a like Hinch Herbivore is in the hospital right now. Um, the Seventh Day Adventist organization that published that paper that claimed that humans could thrive on a plant-based diet at all stages of life. Of one of the primary scientists that published that paper, she recently died at the age of 52, and I actually had some correspondence with I think they used to call themselves the American Dietetic Association. They've changed it for PR reasons, but I've had some correspondence with them actually. If you look on my community section on my YouTube channel, you'll see that they were not forthright about that, because what happened is right after she died, they chose not to renew that paper. So they've retracted that. A lot of vegans still running around claiming that that's still current and relevant, and it's actually not. There's lots of scientists that are actually coming together now and creating a group so that they can be heard, because they've been the silent majority that have been allowing the the corporations pushing veganism to kind of be the only outspoken individuals. So it's actually pretty the consensus, the general consensus, even with vegan doctors. Doctors that are on YouTube, Dr. Greger, Dr. Garth, they all talk about the deficiencies that will occur on a vegan diet. So I hypothetically, yeah, if you could prove that a plant only diet, a completely meat-free diet, a completely animal product-free diet would allow the human race to thrive. In that hypothetical world, of course, of course, of course. But the problem is that we don't live in a hypothetical universe. We live in
Yeah, of course.
reality. And in reality, The vegan diet causes essential nutrient deficiencies, and that's where we're stuck, is in reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with you. So sometimes it'd be nice if we could live in our fantasy land. But yes, so one issue I have with how you answered that is so my question to you is if you were presented with human outcome data that was sufficient to convince you, and then instead of citing like research or papers or peer review studies, or you cited your brother, you cited an example from the ADA, the American Dietetics Association, who you had correspondence with, that had some change or something with the paper. You cited the Adventist Health study, but not the study, just that somebody who was an author of that died at an early age. You cited some vegan doctors on YouTube that said that there are deficiencies. And I think there might have been one other that you said there were some scientists coming together. I didn't quite catch what the point was there, but I'm just wondering if you evaluate evidence the same way that I do. Are you familiar with like the evidence hierarchy? And do you agree with it?
No, I don't agree with it, because there's tons of research out there showing that meta studies are only as good as the studies that are cherry picked to be included, and so there's biases in meta studies, and so the theoretically that could be in a perfect world, then that hierarchy would be accurate. But because we don't live in a perfect world, we live in a world where the scientific research has to be funded. It's often, these days, pretty much always, is funded by vested interests, and sometimes those vested interests are disclosed, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're, for instance, Oxford right now. There's some scientists that will publish studies that are friendly to veganism. However, they won't disclose any conflicts of interest. And if you try to find a direct conflict of interest, you can't find it. But if you look at the university that they're publishing from, then you'll find that Oxford has partnered up with corporations like Bayer Pharmaceuticals, Monsanto, Pfizer, and so you actually can trace down biases and conflicts of interest that are relevant to these studies, and the hierarchy of the scientific hierarchy of what was the
like the evidence. I know what you mean. The evidence
yeah
hierarchy.
it's been corrupted, and so there's a lot of you probably haven't researched this, but if you research, you'll see that there are lots of studies that have been published proving that metadata is always cherry picked, and any metadata study
So okay,
is only going to be as good as the studies that were cherry picked.
Can I ask a quick question, Michael, before you finish up on that? Can I ask a quick question? Garland, is there a way that you could describe anything that could actually happen in our real world that would make you feel differently? Like, is there a way a type of study or anything could come out? Or do you think in our world, realistically, there's nothing that, if it were to come out, would convince you?
Well, one of the reasons that I couldn't be convinced by any study is because not all scientific information comes from studies. Right now, you can, for instance, you can get online and you can order a science textbook on the field of mammalogy. Mm-hmm. And so everything that's in there is not going to be part of some study that's pitted one thing against another. It's just the scientific facts as we know them, presented in a way for people to understand. For instance, humans are mammals, and that's why I bring up mammalogy. Um, we've got two types of mammals that thrive on plants. They're herbivores. Frugivores also fit into this category. Um, Frugivores, by the way, they eat a lot of insects and other animals. So, uh, but mammals that are herbivores, plant-based eaters, fall into two different categories. They're either, hold on just a second.
Yeah.
I've got a rooster. I need to.
Gotcha. um, that's awesome. I think actually when that rooster was making some noises earlier, me and you both smiled, and I think that just shows that we're vegan. We're vegans. That hearing an animal just makes us excited. But yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry to jump in there. I was just I was
No.
curious if he was going to say if any possible study he would view as
Mhm.
like just a study that could be wrong. So I think he did say if it was worded a certain way or if it was a certain scientific consensus similar to humans being mammals, that maybe it would. But anyways,
I
go
do. Yeah, I do not. Um, do you know the story of Galileo?
Wait, but let me just quickly respond to the meta-analysis thing. Because you said that meta-analysis cherry picks studies. I just want to address that sentence, and then you can say the Galileo thing. So what a meta-analysis does is it uses selection criteria. So it's cherry picking. But when you use the word cherry picking, usually it's like you're in the negative sense, you're implying that there's like an irrelevant reason for eliminating or including certain studies. So a systematic review or a meta-analysis, what they have criteria for the studies, like that they are comparing apples to apples, and they have a sufficient sample size, and that they've used a certain methodology to conduct the study, like a food frequency questionnaire or better or something. Like they have all these, like they have segmented data for different like controls to eliminate I'm blanking on the word, to eliminate oh my gosh, what's the word where it like pollutes the results because of somebody in the chat help me out. What's the word? I'm just blanking on the word. Anyway, they eliminate for the studies that aren't relevant to the question being asked, and they look at the body of evidence for the rest of the studies that meet the selection criteria. So yeah, does that make sense?
That's not true.
Well, I mean, they publish their selection criteria, and it's peer reviewed, so people can look at, like, you and I can go and look at the studies in a meta-analysis and see if they meet the selection criteria or not.
Just because something is peer reviewed doesn't mean that it's free of bias.
Michael, do you think that there has ever been or could be a meta-analysis that could be looked at, like in the future could be looked back at, or look at one from like the 90s or something where the outcome is inaccurate?
Oh, yeah, of course. I've
Okay.
seen many I've seen meta-analyses that have inaccurate outcomes, but the way you assess that is by looking at, like, is the selection criteria relevant to the question being asked, and do the studies is this all of the studies out there that are relevant to this topic? Like maybe they didn't keyword search properly or something. Like it's stuff you can do, and scientists can do this better than any of us. And that's what the whole peer review process is. And you'll notice that with most meta-analyses that are published.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, hold on. If you guys are up for it, I would like to actually move to the crop deaths thing. But I like the idea of Garland said that if it could be proven to him that he would, of course, go, yeah, okay, that it's healthy to be vegan. And I think the meta-analysis debate might just be too complicated to go over. So
Can I do a screen share, please?
for sure.
Okay.
Garland, while you're doing that real quick, I just wanted to read a couple questions. I wanted to remind people in the chat, if you have any questions for any of the three of us, just put a capital Q and then your question. Contrarian 420 asked a question that kind of already got answered, which was asking if Garland had read these handful of studies by the American Heart Association, which we have found that different people might accept different studies. So that one's out. The other question that's in here is from
confounding. Thank you, contrarian. That was the word I was looking for.
The other one, the question from Angelo here, I think it's kind of to both you guys, but mostly to Garland, would be, why does passing down human genetic heritage have value greater than the sentience of the animal who dies?
Was that for me?
I think it's for you. I have the same answer as you probably, where I just feel a stronger connection to the species I am that I can connect with. So I value humans higher.
Yeah, I like I said before, I don't think that the only individuals that can be pointed at that don't value humans is vegans, that don't value humans above all other species. Every other species values its own species above the others, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that white-tailed deer should value their own species. They've got a dog in that fight. There's for the except for vegans, the rest of the animal world puts the highest priority on passing their own genetic heritage along into the future. Vegans are the only animals that do not value human beings.
So twice now I've responded to that by saying that animals don't have the ability for higher order mental processing and contemplating moral questions or acting morally.
I think where your mistake is that you're saying that
real quick, Garland, just let me just finish this sentence and then I'm happy to let you go. So I said that twice to you and you didn't address it either time. I'm happy if you want to address it now, and you've kept repeating the same thing. So I'd like you to either just address what I say so that we can kind of put a bow on that, or stop.
Let's put a bow on it. Let's put a bow on it.
All right.
What is your evidence that that's higher thinking? Not valuing humans above other animals.
Sorry. Well, are you asking why do I think humans have the ability to contemplate philosophy and moral questions?
I'm asking you, why do you think that not valuing the human species above all other animals, what's your evidence that coming to that conclusion is the result of some type of higher thinking?
No. That's what I'm saying is that in your reasoning, you keep saying vegans are the only group of all species that don't just favor their own species. And I'm saying it's irrelevant to include animals and anything that can't process like moral, consider morality or higher order thinking. That's why I'm saying higher order thinking. I just mean like to discuss morality, have these like meta discussions.
Well, I think
it's irrelevant to include animals in the group to make a point that like, vegans are the only ones. You know what I mean? Like we don't look to animals for any other ethical things, like, right? Humans are the only species that think that rape is wrong. It's like, okay.
I didn't say that we're looking to animals for our ethics. What I said was that all animals, including human beings, have a natural drive, a natural instinct to value their own species above others. The only animals are about 1% of the human race.
Yeah. Here, let me hop in real quick, because what Michael's meaning is that all animals that are not human, they aren't intelligent enough to make any of these choices whatsoever, and since they can't be advanced, they are constantly just trying to survive and going off their instincts. Humans have this ability to think about these different things. A human can be stupid enough to say, "I wish all humans were dead because we're ruining the world," or something like that, because they have the luxury of having this big brain that can think these things through. So you're right. yes, there are dumb people, and some of them are vegans that will say like, oh, I care more about I would save a cat before I would save a human in a fire or whatever. But Michael's just pointing out that there's no point to bring this up because we know that good or bad choices from a human brain is from a human brain, and all other animals, it doesn't matter that they would do this thing naturally or not. So I think we could probably skip over this, but hopefully that made some sense. I don't know.
Well, I don't think it should be skipped over. I think that
Okay.
if you, I think Michael's wanting to have his cake and eat it too, and that he wants to put all species on the same playing field. Humans are no more special than any other species, that all of these other species are relevant. But whenever you bring up the fact that all other species value their own species above others, then all of a sudden that is not a relevant.
Yeah, it's not irrelevant. Like
It's
if I
not
gave,
irrelevant.
yeah, it's not irrelevant.
But their suffering
relevant.
is relevant. Their
It
suffering
is
is relevant. Their suffering is relevant, but other aspects about them is not relevant. So how do you pick and choose about each species what's relevant and what's not relevant?
Yeah, I think you misheard me. I was saying it is not a relevant thing. I think you thought I said it's not an irrelevant thing.
No,
Right?
why is that a relevant thing when other things are? Something's relevant and another's not relevant.
It is not. I'm saying it's not ever relevant. That's what I'm trying to say.
So animal suffering is never relevant.
No, oh no. I thought you were saying that using species as the basis to differentiate which suffering is relevant and which is not. I'm saying species is never the relevant thing to tell you which being should be or is allowed to have negative rights violations against them. It's not a relevant thing. Sentience is the relevant thing for me. And then like in the way I evaluate how much the sentience matters, I mentioned this maybe while you were gone, Garland, but there's like a bunch of stuff that I would stack together to figure out which sentience I value more than other sentience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think that it makes any sense, but I understand what you're trying to say. I don't think that it makes actually any sense whatsoever. I think that what you're doing is you're saying that this about other species matters and this doesn't matter. We're not going to.
The thing I'm saying doesn't matter is you mentioning those chickens. How do you function, Garland? The thing I'm saying doesn't matter is sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Is what they do or what they've like. It sounded to me like you were saying, well, animals don't care about X, therefore it's like vegans are weird because animals and the rest of humans don't care about X. I'm just saying animals shouldn't even factor into that because their sense of morality and what they value, it's like it has nothing to do with the conversation that we're having around moral. Right.
And so you don't think that valuing humans has any moral relevance?
I don't quite know what you mean by that question.
Well, I think what you're saying is that valuing human beings is not moral. There's no morality to. It's not ethical. It's not moral to value the human species above other species. It's immoral to do that.
Under my view, the same way that any irrelevant, like valuing one race over another race or whatever, it's just not a relevant trait about us.
So you don't think there's any value in passing on the human genetic line?
Any value? Well, I do care about it.
Yeah, you care about it, but you don't think that there's any. You would be happy. You would be just as happy if humans went extinct tomorrow.
No,
you wouldn't really care.
No, I would care.
Okay, but let's say this chicken up here, you would like to see his genetic line end.
Yeah, I think the poor guy would the future chickens would be better off not ever having existed yet.
You don't think that that chicken wants its genetic? You don't think it has a drive to pass on its genetic heritage?
I think it has a biological drive.
But you want to take
The,
that away from him? You want to? Wouldn't that be a rights violation?
yeah.
A negative rights
Well,
violation.
yeah. So we can get into the specifics there. So it's like if you're giving me a hypothetical where I have a button that just like instantly kills every chicken, is that sort of what you're trying to ask? Is what I push the button?
Well, I know that the two of you would like all domestic animals to go extinct. Correct?
Not if
Carson
they
certainly thinks that. I'm sort of agnostic on that
if
personally.
they can survive in nature. I think it's completely different. So, for example, I think the issue here would be the breeding. If the chicken you had right there was out in nature and it could survive, then if it breeds on its own, that's one thing where the breeding is the issue.
Right. The fact that they've had a synergistic relationship with humans all these hundreds of thousands of years is irrelevant to you because we see, like in uh, other species, we find species that have paired up and have a reciprocal benefit to their genetic heritage, where they actually do, like for instance, there's species of ants that will farm aphids, and the aphids benefit from the ants because the ants protect them, and at the same time the aphids excrete uh, bodily fluids that feed the ants, and so there's this reciprocating synergistic relationship between the two that makes that relationship, it makes those species more able to survive in the world
Mm-hmm.
because of their reciprocating relationship. The ants take care of the aphids feed the ants. It's what you're saying is that the ants are guilty of a negative rights violation and that the aphids should be exterminated or separated from the ants. And what would happen there is both species would suffer.
Well, just so you know, so vegan gains might feel that, but I think both me and Michael don't extend the negative rights violations from animal to animal. It's just human to animal.
Okay, so this is what's weird is that vegans, they want
Because we're
all
capable.
species to be on the same level, but then
Mm-mm.
they start moving species into different levels and compartmentalizing, and humans have to live by these rules and animals have to live by those rules. And yes, I mean, you can get into rape and stuff like that, of course, but
Do you think it should be illegal to stab a dog?
should it be legal to stab a dog?
Illegal. Like if somebody stabs a dog just for fun, should they go to jail because our society values dogs? This isn't a trick or anything.
No, I don't think that it should be legal to torture animals.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So that's kind of the point that at least I'm making. I don't know if Michael feels the same, but so animals we can't hold them accountable for how they treat each other, or at least I don't. It's not something that's a top priority of mine or anything. But we can decide amongst ourselves what should we make legal and illegal in our society. So if we say that. We don't think we should be able to torture dogs, so you get a fine or you get some jail time. We can't. We just can't say the same thing about ants or aphids to each other. It's just what humans do to torture.
Yeah, that you that's a category of philosophy or thinking that is kind of a um, you know uh, I can go. There are people out there who are anti-vegan who have a very callous approach to their anti-veganism, where they don't have any type of concern for any torture of animals, I think my personal philosophy is that I am an animal lover. I take good care of my animal. My animals live in a heavenly existence. Yeah, each one of them at some point is going to end up on the dinner plate. But until that day, they're going to be living a better life than any of the wild animals out in nature. So I think what at the you can't, when we talk about suffering, this is when I start trying to think from the perspective of these more callous individuals, is that suffering is not something that's really tangible. It's not like suffering is something that you can hold in your hand. Where let's say that there's a gazelle out on the plains of Africa, gets eaten alive by a pride of lions. Where does that suffering go once that animal is dead? Does the suffering does it get piped into some container, and that container just keeps getting larger and larger and larger, and it's a problem because there's too much suffering in the universe?
Yeah. Well, luckily
Or
we
does it dissipate into the ether, so to speak?
it dissipates, but luckily we all agree on this. So I think we all agree. Let's not worry about the lion doing it, but we can all agree that if I went and captured a gazelle, brought it to the U.S. or Canada, and I just stabbed it for fun, that maybe there should be a law against the torturing it, even though that dissipates. So even though we might disagree on different levels of things, we do agree that even though the suffering dissipates, humans shouldn't be able to make humans suffer. And in a lot of ways, humans shouldn't be able to make animals suffer unless the outcome is worth it. For you, the outcome would be what you call a healthy diet. For us, the outcome might be something different. Like I might make an animal suffer if it magically made my daughter not die or something. And I don't know where Michael might make an animal suffer, probably saving a human over a dog in a fire. Which isn't him making it suffer, but anyways, you get the idea. So I think we all agree on the suffering. But after we finish this topic, I was gonna go over a handful of questions when you guys feel up for answering questions.
Can I unless Garland, if you want to say something, I have one more thing maybe before you do that, Carson. That's cool.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Garland, did you have anything first or?
No, go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned just the story of your farm there, and you said that the animals on your farm live a heavenly existence and way better than wildlife or what those animals maybe would have otherwise, the life they would have otherwise had, until the day they end up on the dinner plate. So I find that just do you think that as long as you leave somebody better off, you can do whatever you want to them?
Not the human species, no.
What about an animal?
Do I believe that I can do whatever I want as long as I leave them better off?
Yeah. I can give some examples if you'd like, or.
Yeah, give me an example.
Well, so I kind of heard you say you did that with the animals on your farm. They wouldn't have had a life this good. So I can think of other examples, like maybe taking in a deer from the wild who probably would have starved to death, and you just you fence it in, you adopt the deer, you feed it every day. Is that that would be one example? The deer maybe would have been better off, but you've imprisoned it.
No, you've changed it. You changed it mid hypothetical, because you said if you're going to leave it better off, but then you changed it and said, but the deer would not be better off. It's either better off.
It would be better off. It would be better off.
What?
It would be better off. I'm not changing it. I'm saying better off than the deer.
So if you're reducing suffering, that's bad.
I'm asking you what your view. And I'm trying to see if there's a consistent.
Right. I'm trying to qualify your question. And what you're saying is that if I reduce the suffering of an animal, that's bad.
I'm not weighing in on my view. I'm just asking what your view is. So I'll just
I
remind you
think
the underlying question is should you be able to do whatever you want to an animal as long as you basically leave it better off than it would have otherwise been.
Can you give me an example of doing whatever I want to an animal that would leave them better off? That would be wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can under my view. I'm just curious if that's your view, though, before I go into.
So, well, here, let me try. Okay. So, the idea was this deer is out in nature, and we're going to say this deer is one of the many that may be starved to death or get eaten by something. But let's say it breaks a leg and it's just going to suffer for a long time or whatever. So, you take this deer and you fence it in and you give it a good life. Can you do whatever you want as long as the final outcome of everything you do isn't worse than what it would have went through? So if it would have went through like 10 units of pain followed by death, as long as you don't like if you brought it home and made it suffer and crammed it into a tiny cage or whatever, you could say that would be worse than what it had before. But as long as you make it have a better life, is that acceptable to you?
Well, I don't view the world on an individual by individual basis. I would view the world more on a species basis. I think that there's value in a healthy environment and a healthy ecology. And so I probably would not support going and taking a wild animal and caging it. I would rather allow nature to take its course, and whatever happens to that one individual is what happens. What I would more uh, value is what happens to the species. And so in the natural world, there's certain, death is part of life. And so I would not, if someone was out there trying to um, rescue all the wild animals, I would discourage that, even if that each individual animal was going to be saved and cared for. I would rather that they leave those animals alone, let them die in nature, because their death is actually going to be contributing to the positive aspects of other animals out there that exist.
Let's say it
Well,
was a domesticated animal in that case, like just to.
actually,
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off, Michael. I just want to ask something because I think I might know something about Garland you don't. So this might help. Garland, do I understand correctly that you're against factory farming? You wish that would end, and so therefore, by your own morals, you would want all farming to involve what you would call happy cows, happy pigs, happy whatever, eating grass, living pretty much as good of a life any of these animals can with as much room as they can, and then a quick, as pain-free death as possible. Is this correct?
Yeah, the truth, the bigger picture is that um, now I know that there's, you guys wouldn't believe me that PETA has been caught repeatedly staging animal torture porn, for lack of a better term. Um, have you seen the video of the cow, the milk cows sloshing through the feces? That was staged. There's been other vegans and animal rights activists that have been caught paying for animal torture porn video footage. I'm working on a video about that. There's been some that
I mean,
have
there's
actually
bad
been,
actors in every space. Like,
there have been some that have been even, well, we're talking about PETA and other high profile animal rights activists that have been caught, and some of them even convicted of this. And so, the truth is that I've been around animal agriculture, and I do not support the concentrated feedlot model. However, I have been now chickens might be a different scenario, but cattle, for instance, and even pigs might be a different scenario. But cattle in a CAFO, concentrated feedlot scenario, are not necessarily suffering. They're being poisoned. They are being poisoned. The food that they're feeding them is like candy, right? It's just like if you feed a human child, candy all the time, they're going to be getting lots of pleasure from it, but that candy is also going to be making them ill. And so, there's certain things that provide pleasure that actually cause harm. And so, the concentrated feedlot model, not in all cases, is actually causing suffering. There's many of these animals that are in concentrated feedlot scenarios that are just happy as they can be while they're there. Most cattle, in fact, virtually all cattle are grass fed. They're all pastured. They're out there eating grass and forages, natural prairie forages, until about 3 months before they're going to be slaughtered, and they're taken to a concentrated feedlot where they're fattened up for those last 3 months. So there are no cattle that are fed grain all their life. I mean, it happens in isolated incidents. You will find like less than 1% of the cattle out there that live in those conditions. But the status quo is that the packers, the meat packers, or the cattlemen that sell to the meat packers, they either contract with farmers like me, or they go to a local cattle auction, and they buy cattle that they take to these concentrated feedlots, and they feed them for 3 months to fatten them up. But before that, these cattle were all on pasture, living a life that would be similar to, but better than, the bison that were roaming the North American continent before the 1800s.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I like learning new things like that, and I'll look into that. Michael, before I read the questions, did you have anything you wanted to top that off with?
I still wanted an answer to the question. Do you think it's morally okay to do whatever you want to an animal as long as you leave them better off than they would have otherwise been?
I answered that, and I said no, because there's a bigger picture.
But
I value the ecosystem.
Yeah, factor that out. It's all neutralized in the hypothetical. So like, use a domesticated animal if it helps.
Then I'll say yes. It should be fine if you're going to leave the animal. Like, for instance, if I'm walking, we've been getting a lot of rain around here lately, and for some reason that I haven't figured out yet is that it has really set the terrapin. You know what a terrapin is? It's like a turtle, but they're dry land turtles. They don't live in the water. But I've been seeing them crossing the highway. And so when I see them crossing the highway, I've actually been stopping, getting out, walking onto the highway, grabbing one of these terrapins and walking it over into the bar ditch and dropping them into the grass so they can get off of the highway and not be run over. So do I think that's okay? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, but the problem with that view, Garland, is that the entailments can be kind of, to me, that I don't like some of the entailments. So just as an example, with that same terrapin turtle, you could do that thing where you take them off the highway, which decreases the likelihood they get hit by a car by 75% or something. And then you stab them a couple of times with a needle because you really love to do it and it's fun. You like the little sound they make.
Wait, hold on. You're changing it because you said you leave the better off.
Let me finish, because
No,
you've left them better off than
no,
they otherwise. No,
no,
this is
you
built
can't
into my
leave them better off.
hypothetical.
If you're
Garland,
stabbing them, you're not leaving them better
you
off.
are. It's built into my hypothetical. Like, let's say the turtle would have been hit. Let's say it 100% would have been hit, and you save it, and now it's okay for you to stab the turtle with a needle because.
How am I leaving it better off if I'm stabbing it with a needle?
Because it would have got hit by the car. It would have been in excruciating pain with its shell cracked. It would have suffocated to death.
How is being stabbed by a needle better off than being hit by a car?
Because you also saved it. You saved it from the horrible natural existence.
No, you said what if I leave it? You said if I leave it better off. If I take it off the road and then stab it, then I'm not leaving it better off.
Garland, Michael, I think you have a good point, but I just want to say I side with Garland on this one, that death itself, in a lot of cases of torture, death would be better than the torture.
Okay.
But there's probably a lot of cases where yours would work.
We can build the pain into the hypothetical easily. So it's like the turtle would have had a cracked shell and been in excruciating pain for hours because it was sitting out there in the sun. It would have starved to death or being eaten by predators alive. Or you save the turtle and you stab it a couple of quick times with a little needle just for fun. So you've left the turtle better off than it otherwise. You've left the turtle.
I think you're way out there on this. I think that you're asking me one question: would you be able to leave the animal better off? And then you try to end your hypothetical with this stabbing of the turtle.
Yeah. You know why?
It's absolutely insane, Michael. It's absolutely insane.
Do you know why I'm doing that?
Because you're trying to justify crop deaths.
No, because this is what you're doing with the animals on your farm. It's a life better than they otherwise would have had dying out in the wild, but you're still stabbing them a couple of times.
It's not better to be stabbed repeatedly than to be run over and killed instantly. It's not.
No, I didn't say killed instantly. I said, if you listened, I said the shell was cracked. It was out there in the sun in agony for hours, eaten alive by predators and starved to death or something. Right? Like I built it into the hypothetical that they would be better off. The same way that wild animals, you used that in your example. You said my animals would have been so much worse off.
I think that your hypothetical is way off base. I think it's absolutely insane. What you're trying to do, Michael, is you're trying to paint a hypothetical that fits your narrative. And you're less than 1% of the human population. Most vegans will stop veganism within a very short period of time. And over the last 20 years, the number of vegans in the world compared to the overall population has flatlined. And that's because there's this constant turnover. It's very much like like multi-level marketing, where you've got these individuals that are out there being activists, but even those activists will drop off. You've got how many of the prominent vegans that have been doing it long term eventually run into health problems and then they stop it. And then people that have been doing it for half as long are giving these long dissertations about how they just don't get it. But the fact is that the vegans that haven't been doing veganism long enough to reach the end of the road regarding their nutritional deficiencies, these people they're egotistical. You're operating on just pure narcissism, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to corral me into admitting that it's better to stab a turtle than it is for the turtle to get run over. And I think that's a very subjective judgment call.
Wait, can I jump in here?
You can actually say that a turtle being stabbed is better than being run over. That's your decision. I do not agree with it.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding with the hypothetical. I totally get and love everything Michael said, but I think that I want to be as fair as possible, and I think the thing that was misunderstood that would help maybe lead to a more accurate hypothetical would be involving the idea that Garland said. Oh, are you still? Yeah, Garland said Garland said that he doesn't think humans should be legally allowed to torture animals. So for Garland, it would be that he thinks that as long as the animals are better off, you can end their life painlessly if we need them for food. Now, you might have factored that in when you were doing what you were doing, but I think that it is important to I don't think Garland is stating that you can do whatever you want as long as it's better off, because he does say you can't torture them, whatever torture means to him.
He's certainly welcome to like update his or clarify his position. I'm not trying to like have a gotcha or anything. If you have a different view than what it seems like I'm trying to lead you down or something, I'm not trying to lead you down anywhere. I'm just trying to understand your view. And so
Carson did explain it pretty well, is that I already explained that I do not think that people should be allowed to torture animals. But now you're giving me a hypothetical, asking me, do I think it'd be okay to torture a turtle once I remove it from? And so your hypothetical is so off in left field that it doesn't even fit the conversation that we're having.
Well, I'll draw the analogy for you in the same way that you've saved the turtle from its painful being run over by a car. When you said when you were describing your farm, Garland, you said that the animals on my farm live a heavenly existence, way better than any wild animal. To me, that's an inference that you're saying it's okay that I kill them because they live a better existence than the wild animals. I'm doing these animals.
That's not what I'm saying.
Pardon me?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not justifying the fact that I kill them.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's okay that I kill them because I treat them well. What I'm saying is that they're living their experience is without suffering. Period.
Okay.
So Garland, is the justification for killing them that you value humans above them and humans need them for health? And then separate from that justification, you're also saying that you would rather the animals that you're going to eat not be harmed, aside from death.
There is no benefit to harming an animal that you're going to eat.
Yeah.
And okay, so is your answer to that question no then? You don't think it's okay to do whatever you want to an animal as long as you leave them better off than they otherwise would have been?
I answered that and I said, no, it's not okay to to take an animal and leave it better off just for whatever reason that you want. I have other reasons than for the individual animal.
Yeah, you're not.
For instance, it's if I was to remove that turtle and take it home and put it in a cage, then I could argue that it was better off than if it was run over. However, it's a wild animal and it's part of the ecosystem. It's not going to be able to procreate if it's locked in a cage. It's not going to be able to pass on its genetic heritage, and if it dies, it's not going to be out there in nature where other animals would be able to benefit from its dead body. Buzzards and what have you.
That when you say all these externalities, it's not addressing the hypothetical, because the hypothetical is meant to be built in a way that's like factoring them out, because I want to get at the root of, like, externalities could go in either direction. Maybe it's better for the environment, maybe it's worse for the environment. It's like I just want to neutralize all of that and get to how you evaluate the action of well, let me ask you, is killing harm to you?
It is killing harm. It depends. If you're just out there killing for fun, then that would be harm. If you're out there killing to acquire essential nutrition and sustenance, then that is not harm.
Okay, Garland, we're actually really close to agreement. So
would you call it harm but acceptable harm?
No, because on the other, it's like this, Carson. If you were out on the African savannah and you saw a lion eating or attacking a gazelle, you would shoot the lion. So that's harm. Okay. Let's say that there was a way for you to put your hand between the lion and the gazelle and prevent the lion from killing the gazelle, now you've caused the lion to suffer starvation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you've caused harm. So
Gotcha.
there's what vegans, except for crop deaths, what vegans do is they say all death is harm, therefore it should be prevented, except those animals that we choose to kill intentionally to protect our crops.
Gotcha. Well, I'm gonna. I don't agree. I think you mix me up with vegan gains when it comes to the lion thing, but I don't really want to comment on that because I do want to ask these questions and the crop deaths thing. So I'm gonna let Michael finish up his thing here.
Yeah, that's okay. We can go to the questions. I just want to address something just super quick. Happy Valley Free Range Farm. Welcome to the stream and thanks for joining us. I do just want to clarify that we did not have a proposition for this. This was just a discussion. I think if there was a crop death thing, maybe Carson put that in the title or something, but we didn't agree to at least as far as I'm aware, we didn't agree to a proposition. We just wanted to have a discussion.
Yeah. Okay. So if you didn't want to question Garland any further on what you guys were just going back and forth on, I will just ask a few of these questions real quick.
Hold on just a second.
Go for it.
Let me turn the light on out here so I can so I'm visible. Hold on a second.
I actually like your lighting on my computer. It looks really cool.
Well, he says that. Well, actually, no, I don't want to try to steal Matt's position while he's not listening. So yeah, go ahead, Carson.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I'll leave it like it is then.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about other computers, but here I can see you perfectly fine. Okay. So Red Briar says, question, is it ethical to buy an animal from a livestock auction? Michael, you want to answer that one?
Sorry. This Happy Valley thing is distracting me. Happy Valley at 8:52 my time, you said more like Nick, I don't understand your prop, even though I agreed to it. I'm just saying that wasn't the case in this. So it's like, if you don't like the line of questioning we're going down, it's not like I'm avoiding getting to some central point that we were all trying to get to. There was no central point. It's just a discussion. So, we're free flowing here. So hope that's okay. Sorry, Carson, you can ask that again.
Okay. So yeah, is it ethical to buy an animal from a livestock auction?
I don't know what a livestock auction is.
It would just be a location where somebody sells animals, and so somebody can go and purchase one from there.
To take care of, you mean? Is that the
no, to purchase an animal? I mean, well, it just has to buy. My guess would be that they mean to buy to farm.
They don't have auctions for pets. They have auctions for livestock. So we're talking about an animal that's eventually going to be eaten by humans rather than wolves.
Yeah, I don't think a livestock. I could be wrong, but I don't think a livestock auction is rescuing wild animals out of the wilderness, though. Either, right? It's probably, what is it? Like, who goes in there in those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would have to entail the idea of the outcome of it, or if you could buy it from an auction and put it on your own sanctuary farm and treat it well, or just buy it and consume. I'm not sure why the question is about the livestock auction itself.
Yeah, if that person wants to clarify, because in both those cases, I would say I think that there could be a case to be made for sort of rescuing it from the outcome it would have had. There's obviously the externality of you're contributing to a system that is exploiting and harming and causing negative rights violations against animals. But it's like in the individual case, you're making the outcome better for that animal. So you're kind of weighing things. I think. Yeah, so I don't have a super strong.
Yeah, I guess my quick answer on that would be that first of all, I hope I'm right that I don't think people need to eat animals. If people did need to eat animals, I would prefer something like hunting, as long as they did a good job of taking it out of its misery as quick as possible. After that, it'd be something like Garland's type of farms. And then after that, each different step. I don't think selling animals is great, but I guess the best version would be if Garland sold them at a livestock farm. Okay, so Randall Randall says, do you know how vegan methylcobalamin is made? Are you aware of the toxic chemicals and the metals used for the process? I'm not aware, aside from hearing it from Garland and maybe somebody else, but I haven't read the studies. Michael, are you familiar with that?
No, I'm familiar with that methylcobalamin is the preferred supplement versus cyanocobalamin and I think there's other B12 options as well. But no, I don't know the process. If you have a video, Garland, on that, feel free to dump it in the comments after, and I'll check it out, or a study or something.
Okay, so Sloppy Fistwad says, what do these vegans think humans' natural diet is? Why don't we see any indigenous tribes that were vegan or even vegetarian, but yet some ate almost all meat? I'll go ahead and answer what I think the natural human diet is, and then Michael, you can say whatever you want. But I would say I would have to guess it would be whatever our closest relatives are, which are thought to be chimpanzees or bonobos, which are considered frugivores, and they 75% like fruit, and then they also eat greens, they eat nuts and seeds, and then they also, like, 4% of their diet is from animal products, like mostly insects, but also other monkeys. That's what I would guess is probably the closest natural diet.
Yeah, I'm agnostic on what the ancestral diet is, but my view regarding ancestral diets is that it's not a good marker for what is healthy for us. There's a concept that you should look into. Who's the questioner on that one?
Slappy Fistwad.
I just wanted to hear the name again. Slappy, you should look into antagonistic pleiotropy. It's essentially, it's a phenomenon that's very well researched, that essentially the effect is that evolution makes trade-offs. So evolution is concerned with, like, getting to a certain point such that you have kids and your kids have kids. And so you'll have, like, longevity of life trade-offs that are made through, like, evolutionary pressure and selection pressure that cause traits to be selected for that are in favor of making your grandkids survive, basically, but not in favor of making your longevity survive. And so the term antagonistic pleiotropy is, it's actually more than 50% of the time that something is good for you to pass on your genes. Essentially, it's actually bad for your longevity. So it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not generally bad for your longevity. What it is that as a human being ages, then there might be dietary changes that would be beneficial for longevity.
No.
But on the other hand, what I think what you're saying is that you would remove those foods that would allow you to be robust, healthy, and fertile, because you think that they're going to add longevity to the human life, when that's not what the evidence is showing. That's not what that is about. What it says is that these foods that you say would allow us to be fertile, you're saying that remove those altogether and you'd have longevity. But no, that's not what it's saying. What it's saying is that the elderly might have a different, say, less protein requirement than someone who's 18.
No, that's not actually anything to do with antagonistic pleiotropy.
Actually, it's exactly what it is.
No,
because if you remove the nutrients that allow a human being to be healthy, robust, and fertile, then what you're doing is you're proposing the extinction of the human race. Because
that has nothing to do with it, and it's not this concept is not limited.
It actually does have everything to do with it. You're mischaracterizing what it's about.
No, I'm not. You're wrong about this one, Garland.
I'm going to invite the non-vegan audience to look this up for yourself, because Michael is taking you for a ride on this one.
Please do. I'd encourage everyone to do that as well. So antagonistic pleiotropy has nothing to do with diet. A diet is a manifestation
right there.
of that phenomenon.
Read,
Can you let me
Carson,
have
read
a
that.
sentence here?
Carson, read that so
Garland,
that he's not.
give me a break.
Michael, you're lying to the people.
Well, you got to let me finish my sentence.
You're either lying or you're misinformed.
Okay, are you?
So
Can I ask you a question? Are you
to
saying
read,
that and
allow
there's no
Carson to read the
example of
definition. It's right
antagonistic
there.
pleiotropy that exists other than with diet?
Carson, would you read what's on the screen right there?
Michael, can you zoom in? Or actually, Michael, can you zoom in? And also, so now everybody can read it. But since I can't even pronounce the second or third word that you guys are talking about, because I don't know anything about this.
The antagonistic
there you go.
Pleiotropy theory of aging
Do you know what a theory is, Garland?
Yeah, it's something that hasn't been. It's not concrete fact. It's a theory.
Oh, no.
Do you know what a theory is, Michael?
Okay, so it's complicated. Words have different meanings in different contexts. So a theory in the scientific realm means that it is fact and concrete. That's
it isn't. No, it isn't. There's
just
flat Earth theory.
There are types.
Theory.
There are. Anyways, it's so complicated. But is there a way we can skip past this?
No, a theory is not a concrete fact. It's a theory. Come on.
No, you're right. You're right. Traditionally, what the word means.
The theory of relativity. The theory of.
It's complicated. Most people do not know this.
I have a theory of aging. That aging is caused by pleiotropic genes whose functions are beneficial to the organism's fitness early in life, whereas these functions are detrimental to its fitness later.
Right. You know what fitness means?
Yes.
What does fitness mean?
Fitness means it means peak health, optimal strength, endurance.
No, not in the concept of evolution. Fitness refers to your ability to survive and reproduce.
We're not talking about evolution here. We're talking about individual organisms. It says right there. It says organism. It says an organism's fitness. It doesn't say a species.
Yeah, but fitness is
evolution.
Would either of you be
that happens to species?
It's talking about gene reproduction. This is.
Would either of you be upset at me if we put a pin in this one?
Yeah, that's fine. But
okay. I'm sorry. So it's complicated. There are so many things, and I would never judge anybody for it. But yes, I never knew for the longest time that survival of the fittest wasn't referring to how fit you are. It's if you are fit to survive, but not fit. And so anyway, same thing. And theory is complicated. Everybody, Garland, everybody in the chat, look up the word theory and how it pertains to science. It's really wonky. Like scientifically, you can't get the term theory until it's proven as fact. But then separate from science, theory has a completely different meaning. But anyways, Garland, are you okay with us putting a pin in that last one?
Yes.
Okay. The next two questions, I believe, are for Garland. Actually, wait. No, Slappy had one more for me. It says, on what basis do you establish something being objectively moral or immoral, buddy? ? I remember when that came up, and it's when I was talking about if you should be able to make torture a dog or whatever. So I will claim that it's not necessarily objective, but I was just claiming that in my mind that us humans that live in a society can decide together that we view making something that can suffer, making it suffer for at very least no reason. We can all agree to call that immoral. Now you don't have to, but if we make it pass by law, like enough people and politicians say, let's not torture dogs. That's what I meant by immoral. That one was for me. This next one's for Garland. Steve Godfrey says, you agree animals shouldn't be gratuitously harmed, so you believe animals have moral value. You draw the line somewhere between that and consuming animals. How do you justify that line?
I justify that line because I do not have a functioning rumen and I do not have a functioning cecum. I am not an herbivorous mammal. I am designed to eat meat. There,
Gotcha.
the rest of the primates that are frugivores, for example, they have a functioning cecum, every one of them. Do you know what the purpose of a functioning cecum is? To produce cecotropes. Do you know what happens to cecotropes? They're eaten. Humans do not produce cecotropes, and they do not eat cecotropes. And cecotropes is where those animals are getting their vitamin B12.
Garland, I love that I learned something new from you almost every day, and I've been telling everybody about voles now that I know what a vole is. So I'm not familiar with cecum or any of these other terms you said, and I'm excited to look them up. Michael, did you want to counter anything he said there, or do you want to move on to the next question?
Go to the next one.
Okay. Let's see. And by the way, that is something I respect about you, Garland. You feel that humans should need to eat animals, and therefore you want to cause as little harm as you can to animals and the ecosystem while consuming these animals. So if you are truthful about what you're saying, and I take everybody at their word, I respect that more than people that do not care and eat like chicken nuggets and hot dogs and all this unhealthy stuff that takes harming animals for. So,
well, the truth is, that, and I can show you the study if you'd like to see it, but vegans as a group of eaters eat more ultra-processed foods than any other group.
gotcha.
In fact, the spectrum goes like this: the more an individual removes meat from the diet, then the higher amount of ultra-processed foods they're eating. And if you were to, talk about the unhealthy aspects of a chicken McNugget, for instance, the harmful stuff there is the seed oils that are being that they're being fried in. Because seed oil. What?
Michael has a strange stance on seed oils, but we definitely should not.
Park that one though. I'm happy to go into that one on another one, Garland. But yeah, I do disagree.
Yeah, okay, and also the breading and the seed oils.
Mm-hmm.
Seed oils are unsaturated, and do you know what it means to be a saturated fat? Do you know what that means? What's it mean, Michael? What's it saturated in?
Yeah, I guess I don't know the technical. I've looked this up at one point. I can't remember right now.
It's not technical. It's a fact. It's just a straight fact.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know the mechanistic interworkings of what it does inside of you. I can't remember. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't remember it all. I could look it up.
Fats are called lipids, okay, and unsaturated lipids are not protected. They're very prone to oxidation.
Wait, sorry, are we going into this now? Because I'm going to want to respond with outcome data on seed oil if we're going into this. Because mechanism is nothing.
Can we go to the next question? But I don't want to do that if you're wanting to delve into this part of it. About the chicken nugget.
I'll tell everyone to go out there and look at what a saturated fat is. It's saturated hydrogen atoms, which makes it a stable fat. It's not prone to oxidation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Unsaturated fats are prone to oxidation, and those fats that they're frying these foods in are exposed to oxygen and heat.
Yeah.
They become oxidized.
I think we all agree, whether vegan or not vegan, or at least vegan or you, that no matter which part of the chicken nugget is the unhealthy part, if somebody is treating their body poorly and eating unhealthfully, then there's no justification for the harm they're doing to the animals, even if it's the other part that's doing it. Can we kind of agree on that at least?
I have no comment. Let's move forward.
Okay, that's fine.
I would be curious to hear your answer to that. Even a yes, no, I'd be curious. I won't.
Michael, we're moving on. I didn't even listen. I don't even know what he said. I'm ready to move on to the next subject. I don't even have an answer for it because I don't know what the question was.
Okay. It seems should we just end then? Why are we here if you're not listening? This is crazy.
Because you're wanting to bring up meta-analysis, which is
no.
I've already proven contains biases. So
No. I'm just saying if you're
it's
going
a
to go
health,
into
it's got
discussing
a
a
health
mechanism, I
outcome
want to
data
present
on
human
seed
outcome
oils.
data. You can't just like we're in a discussion, and if you're
I can show you a graph showing that as animal fats have been replaced, all of the diseases, diabetes,
yeah, what else
cancer, heart
correlated with
disease,
that same timeline?
as seed oil consumption goes up, so does diseases of
Yeah.
civilization.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, and I would love for you to answer, but if you don't feel like it, that's fine. I'll repeat the question.
What is the question again? And I'll give you an
Yeah,
answer.
it's all right. I was just saying that, in your mind, if humans need to eat something like chickens for health, and therefore you will eat hormone-free, grass-fed, free-roaming chickens for your health, that would you be willing to say that a person that doesn't care about their health, that is going to eat something like chicken nuggets, even though the bad part isn't the chicken, it's the other part, that if they're going to harm their health, that an animal shouldn't be harmed for them to be unhealthy anyways? Like, is it only reasonable to harm animals for our health?
Okay. It's not the animal portion of that that's causing the harm to the health.
Correct. But is it reasonable to harm animals to consume when having zero care about one's health? Because to me, that's kind of like the torturing the dog thing, where I get it. If you are right that you need to eat animals to be healthy, then you eating animals, I'd say thumbs up. If you're right, then that's great. But no matter what, if somebody doesn't care about their health and they're going to eat unhealthy foods and they're 300 pounds overweight, that those people harming an animal not for their own health, that's kind of more tantamount to the dog stabbing. If you have a quick thought on it, you can share, but if you don't want to answer, I can move on to the next question.
Well, I would have to bring in the crop deaths would have to be part of this hypothetical, right? And so let's say someone was eating vegan donuts, for
Oh,
example.
vegans might be way worse. Let's say all the vegans suck. I'm just saying, does a 200 or 300 pound overweight animal eater, would you at least call them bad as well? Or at least you would call the action of making an animal dead to not benefit their health. Would you call that, in your opinion, not morally good?
Can you name a food that comes from that is there an animal out there that we're killing so that we can make it into an unhealthy food? In other
Yeah.
words, the hot dogs, the
Mm-hmm.
the chicken that makes up the chicken McNuggets, these are all byproducts of
Mm-hmm.
the meat industry. And so the hot dogs are made up of collagen and
Yeah. No, I'm just saying.
the
So I don't want to cut you off, but I'm just saying. Like, I'm not calling the meat part the unhealthy part. I'm just saying if a person that, let's say, they consume the healthiest meats possible, but then also separately they just drink sugar and they gain 300 pounds, they do not care about their health. Do you think that it's acceptable for that person to harm an animal when they're not harming the animal for health benefits the way you are? Does that make
Okay,
sense?
yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, but things like choline, creatine, vitamin K2, MK4,
Mm-hmm.
B12, there's a bunch of nutrients that they can get in meat that they wouldn't get from the sugar. And so this individual would be much, much more unhealthy if they were just
If
eating
they
the
cut the meat.
sugar. And then you go look at the sugar industry and you find out that there's 86 different deadly pesticides that they're using on sugarcane, and it's driving whole species. It's killing so many
Yep.
birds that they're being driven towards extinction, and it's
Mm-hmm.
causing birds to starve to death because the insects that they used to eat have been killed by all the pesticides. So it
Okay.
turns
Okay.
out that actually the problem was the sugar. And so the
Gotcha.
problem is the plant-based diet, not the
Okay,
animal.
I'll just move on to the next questions. Unless Michael, you look like you wanted to say
Well,
something.
yeah, like, so just one way to just modify that slightly, Carson, is like, let's say it's somebody that eats all of their micronutrients for the daily dose that they need to be optimally healthy, and they've eaten an omnivorous diet, like whatever you'd recommend, but then they want to like eat 4 more chickens, like fried in whatever you don't think is healthy, and just for the taste. Is that and they have to kill those chickens in order to do it? Like, is that part of it wrong? The excess.
Like if they magically
I
knew.
think gluttony is, to me, gluttony is a self-harming activity. So
Cool.
I discourage gluttony and all, whether it's a vegan or a animal meat
And
eater,
and
whatever.
separately from the gluttony, you think that they are committing an immoral act by harming the animals that they didn't need to with the gluttony. Because you could the glutton could just eat vegan cake, and that you could call that wrong. But would you also say that a second added element is that they're being a glutton, being harmful to themselves, but also those chickens they caused harm to could have been eaten in a good way the next day, or by somebody else?
Well, I think you know what this is where the vegans, I think there's like the synapses aren't actually making contact, because let's say it wasn't 4 chickens, let's say it was 16 pounds of soy curls, and then you go and find out that 47 animals had to die for that extra poundage of soy curls, and
We'll
the
answer
actual
that if you answer the other question.
Yeah.
I just did. I just said that all
Okay.
gluttony, whether it's a vegan gluttony or
That wasn't the question.
But okay, so yes, so the both forms of gluttony you say are bad, but the form of gluttony that also harms the chicken, would you say that that was not a justifiable harming of the chicken since that chicken wasn't used for health benefits? It's not a gotcha or anything. I'm just curious.
yeah, I think that the individual is harming their own health, and that's the primary wrong that's happening, is that they're harming their own
Okay.
health.
Is there a secondary wrong though, where that chicken should have gone to somebody for somebody else's health or that person's health the next day?
Sure, I think that it wouldn't matter whether it was a meat food, an animal-based food or a plant-based food. Both animal and plant-based foods cause suffering and death.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether it's meat
You're
or
right.
plant.
So overeating the vegan cake is causing these unnecessary crop deaths. Overeating the chicken is causing the death of the chicken. But if I grew food in my backyard, which I'm currently doing, and the lettuce is going nuts, I might hit something with a shovel. But aside from that, I'm not using pesticides. So if I overeat lettuce, which I don't even think you can do, but let's say hypothetically you could, then there might be the gluttony aspect of it, but there wouldn't be a secondary harming animals, where vegan cake would have the secondary crop deaths and the chicken secondary chicken death. So you do agree that the secondary deaths matter?
No, when you grow a garden, there was an ecosystem there that you weren't involved with. It was existing outside of your influence.
Correct.
And there were snails and worms and beetles and squirrels and voles and moles and raccoons and all kinds of animals were making use of that land. And you came in and you killed some of those in the act of clearing a spot for your garden, and then you killed a bunch more by going in and plowing it up and destroying the soil horizon. And then you even killed more by going to the store and buying seeds that were packaged in paper, that were from trees that were cut down. And so
let me clarify real quick then. And let's also imagine I harvest my own seeds, because I do. I'm cool like that. But okay,
how do you harvest which seeds have you harvested?
Sorry, I didn't harvest the originals, but once I got into gardening and learning some
Wait,
stuff.
so you did not harvest the originals?
Well, I mean, correct. But anyways, hold on.
The originals.
I don't know. I can't remember.
And you didn't clear a spot for the garden?
No, I did. Hold on. Just give me a quick sec. And this will be my last question on this, and then we'll leave it. No. Oh, hold on. It's just my backyard. But okay, so would you rank, if the gluttony is equal in all three cases, would you rank the gluttony something like this? The secondary deaths, would you say that the worst is the vegan cake one because the crop deaths, and then the chicken one, and then the guy that's planting in his backyard, that his backyard is cleared of these things you're talking about, but it's the least of the worries of the three?
What is the least of the worries of the three? Which one?
Like would you rank them based on the unnecessary harm to to animals, the secondary part? Like would you say that the worse than eating the extra chicken is eating the vegan cake because you think crop deaths are so much worse than the chicken, but then the chicken part might be worse than the fact that my backyard at one point was wildlife, and then that was turned into a backyard. I'm guessing you're okay with the existence of backyards, but anyways, you don't have to get into the.
You had a video recently. You were planting some blueberry bushes.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that.
I didn't see any other blueberries back there. Those were
Yeah.
the only blueberries. You were planting blueberries, right?
Correct.
And you didn't harvest those seeds.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if when you were going to rank based on secondary parts of this, so aside from the gluttony, are you factoring in the amount of harm, needless harm to animals because the person had already gotten their fill and they magically they knew it. They knew they needed all the healthy food they needed for that day, and any extra is harm to their own body. So the gluttony, but we're setting that aside. To rank the secondary part of it, would you base it off the harm to the animals?
I don't understand your question.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm just gonna move on.
You're asking me. I think what you're asking me is, do I care about harm to animals?
Yeah, which is why I thought it. I thought it was an easy answer.
My number one priority is human health.
Human, yeah.
Okay. Harm to animals is a secondary consideration. I don't think that animals should be, that human beings should be torturing animals. I don't think that human beings should be killing animals for fun.
Yeah.
But I think that it's appropriate and necessary for animals to be killed and eaten for optimal human nutrition.
Okay, yeah. So people that are extremely overweight, whether they're eating stuff that cause crop
You don't
deaths
have to
or
be extremely overweight.
okay, so anybody over, I like to go past. Anyways, anybody overweight,
Quit overweight. Right?
yeah.
Okay.
So anybody overweight that is eating things that will cause crop deaths or just cause individual deaths.
I think that I've just said something very relevant. Yeah. I've got someone that's trying to get me by
I'm
having
not.
me. By,
there's
I
no
mean,
gotcha.
we've been talking about this for the last 15 minutes, and you're overweight.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is like Michael Jackson's song "Man in the Mirror." You know, if you want to make a change, start with the man in the mirror.
I'm not talking about change. I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering your stance. I'm not even offended.
Food, then you can justify you're causing extra animal harm.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think that I don't think overweight vegans should be getting overweight and overeating, causing more crop deaths. I'm with you.
Vegans who are causing extra animal harm should be lecturing meat eaters about harming animals.
He's asking
lecture. Yeah, there's no lecture. But yes, anybody can have a stance on anything. I can have a stance on abortion without being a woman. I could be 800 pounds and have a stance on weight health. So yes, but I don't know about lecture, but we can move on.
I think I've made my point.
Yeah, no, and we all care about animals. Okay, why Snivels says, why does Garland see vegans as such a threat when we are 1% of the world's population?
Because the vegan diet is being promoted by corporations like Bayer, Pfizer, organizations like the World Economic Forum, huge corporate interests, a lot of them pharmaceutical corporations that are that are financing this vegan narrative. And so if it was just 1% of the human population that didn't want to eat meat, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But we've got large money, huge, the largest, the most powerful entities in the world that are pushing this narrative. For instance, Bill Gates, for instance, he's telling us that the third world countries, the developing countries, can continue to eat meat, but the rich countries must stop eating meat. We're going to be eating plant-based mock meats that are full of all types of toxic chemicals, and then we're going to be eating lab-grown meats. And lab-grown meat is very energy intensive. It's grown with immortalized cells, which means that there's only one type of cell in any animal that's immortal, that just keeps dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing, and that's cancer. So that's technically what they're doing, is they're growing cancer tumors, and they're proposing that if we want to eat meat, then we can eat this cancer tumor. And
Gotcha.
I think it's dangerous to our health. I think it's dangerous. It's very much like what you guys are talking about. Is it okay to do to an animal what you want to, as long as you leave it in a situation that you think where it's better off? And you're not okay with me doing that for a turtle, but you're okay with doing that to other human beings, when neither one of you are nutritional experts. But you're willing to snap your fingers and put everyone in a situation. Are you aware of the recent study that came out of UK that proved that half of women do not have?
All right, sorry, but you
ability-
strawmanned us. So I'm just going to interject quickly because you're speaking for us. So I'm just going to clarify our position that if the empirics work out in your favor, Garland, both Carson and I are on your side. So we just have a disagreement about what the empirics say, right? So we're not trying. You ascribed intent to us. We're not trying to do that.
The
right?
question is why am I concerned about what 1% of the world wants to eat? And it's not just that vegans want to eat a plant-only diet. Okay, that's not, if that was the case, I wouldn't be here. The other part is you guys are having. I mean, Carson has had 5 or 6 conversations over the last month, waxing philosophically about whether or not vegans should be murdering non-vegans or ex-vegans. Should we hang them? How should we kill them? How many? How fast can we kill them?
I just want to throw out really quick.
Vegan non-vegans.
Vegan Gains brought that up to me. I'm very against that. A buddy of mine named AJ turning veganese. No, I talked to a lot of people about it.
You're bringing it up on a regular basis.
I'm bringing it up to see how crazy some of my vegan friends are.
Vegans are talking about murdering non-vegans.
Yeah, those.
Hey, Garland, you're talking about it right now too. Uh-oh.
I'm talking about it being a problem. I'm not talking about.
I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem as well. They are crazy.
You said that whenever Vegan Gains asked you about that, he said, talking about that vegan teacher hanging an ex-vegan, and you said, no. The reason it would be wrong isn't because it's wrong to do that. It would be right to do that. It would harm the animals, because right now, because of the societal societal environment, the mentality of society right now is that it pushes people away from veganism, but that in the future, that would be the right thing to do. That would be the right thing to say.
I think I misworded some things in that talk, and a couple of your buddies pointed that out to me, and I made an entire video explaining that. But no, I didn't say that the only problem is that it hurts the vegan movement. I was pointing out that it does hurt the vegan movement. The other thing I was saying...
No, we can pull it up right now, and I will show you that you did say that the issue with saying that is that it harms animals.
Okay, I might have worded something wrong. That would not have been my intent. The other element I was trying to point out was that in the future, if I am right in my thought that we one day will find out we do not need animal products whatsoever, and it'll become something that will be thought of as immoral to consume once we know to an extreme, that then there would be laws about doing so. And at that point, when the laws exist, if somebody were to break those laws, I would want them to get the amount of trouble the law calls for. And that's only with that knowledge of this understanding in a hypothetical world where we perfectly know a thing. If it sounded like I was saying that the vegan teacher is right and Alex should die, it is not correct. And that's why I keep bringing it up to every vegan I talk to find out which ones are the craziest. And AJ, who is watching this right now, knows that he is the craziest. And then there's a few people after him, but most people, like I'm thinking Michael, does not want Alex to die. So anyways, we can move on to the next question, but
there's enough vegans that they're bloodthirsty right now for non-vegans, for people that what they call carnists, and they have a deep hatred, a visceral murderous emotion about them. They're discussing killing. They're publicly expressing a desire to kill people who eat meat. And
you're not wrong, but that's the internet. The internet's full of people that want to kill all the trans people and all the Christians.
It's not the internet. The internet is like a shovel, okay? A shovel is not going to do anything. It's not going to go out and dig a hole. The only thing that's going to cause a shovel to dig a hole is if someone goes over there and grabs a shovel and starts digging a hole with it. That's like the internet. So we can't blame it on the internet.
I'm not blaming it on the internet. I'm saying
using the internet as a tool to express outwardly and publicly. I mean, you can imagine that if non-vegans were having that kind of discussion about vegans, that the FBI or someone would come in and put a stop to that. But the powers that be that are under the umbrella of the World Economic Forum and other corporate interests that want to push a plant-based diet on the entire mankind, they're going to sit back and they're going to let these high-paid vegan influencers. Who was that bodybuilder vegan influencer that came out recently and confessed that once he was another person that ran into health problems, and he confessed that he was being paid something like $30,000 a month to promote veganism by all these corporations, and that I'm sure that Vegan Gains is being paid very handsomely to carry out his influence. So the fact that these vegans are allowed to express murderous thoughts and intentions is scary. And the fact that I have a brother who was born with a birth defect because of a plant-based diet, and we have all these vegans that don't have any type of background or understanding or education of optimal human nutrition, that would take the ability for me to keep my children nourished. These people are looking to do me harm. They are bloodthirsty. They don't want to just hurt me. They want to hurt my children.
I think I can speak for Michael here that we both don't necessarily agree with anything specific that is said by vegans on the internet. If you're up for it, can I go to the next question?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think you do make good points, and it's worth analyzing comments made by vegans if they're right or wrong or whatever. Okay, so Randall says, why would you want to make species go extinct instead of reversing their DNA to reintroduce them, guinea pigs, to South America's ecosystem? You didn't care about the ecosystem except with the lion. Okay, so Randall's not talking about anything here, but he saw a video, or maybe it was a comment I made to him about how since guinea pigs were bred from other rodents, they were bred into existence to be food in South America, and now I was pointing out that it would probably be best if they just go extinct. I would be curious to hear both your thoughts if either of you know anything about this, but what I was pointing out is that right now the guinea pig that is a pet only, if they're not affecting the ecosystem right now, so they can either be pets or they could go extinct. and then the ecosystem is what it is. I don't know if Randall thinks, or if either of you do, that if you reverse engineer the DNA of guinea pigs back to some kind of a wild rodent, that would benefit the ecosystem to put them back in. I don't know if either of you have thoughts on that.
I don't have any strong thoughts on
Okay.
it. Like, I would factor in all sorts of things. I think, like, oh my gosh, like if the externalities went in favor of the benefit to the planet far enough in one direction, I think that like playing around with organisms like that could be justified, but you'd need to be really sure, and it would need to be a big benefit for me to be ethically okay with it. I don't know if that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. I guess I just don't know much about that kind of thing. Or I don't know much about not only rewilding things or reverse engineering DNA. I don't know which animals in the ecosystem specifically are more good for the ecosystem than others. Okay. And then the last two questions, I believe, are for Garland. Or Angelo. I always pronounce his name wrong, and I have to think of Michelangelo. Okay. Anyways, for Garland, have you ever gone 100% plant-based for an extended period of time? Like, have you ever tried out eating just
Yeah, I
plants?
did. I was actually, I put myself through college on an athletic scholarship, and I was misled to believe that a plant-based diet, well-planned vegan diet, would actually help me perform higher athletically. And I read this in some different magazines at the time. I tried it, and after a little bit more than a month, I had lost so much muscle and so much strength that it was shocking. I showed up to the field house to work out, and the defensive coordinator met me out there. He was coming out of the building as I was walking in, and he looked at me like he was shocked. His eyes were big around. He had a look of fear on his face, and he asked me if I was okay, and I said, yeah. He said, well, you look like you've lost a lot of weight. And I said, well, I think I'm just losing fat. I'm trying to lean down. I've been on a vegan diet. And he said, you better be careful or you're going to lose your scholarship. And I kind of scoffed it off like a vegan would. I went in there and I had lost 25 pounds. I went in and we had a machine in there that would test my body fat. My body fat had actually gone up a little bit. And I went in and tried to do some weightlifting, and I had lost like 40 pounds on my bench press, 45 pounds. It scared the shit out of me, to be honest with you. I immediately went back to eating meat, and that's actually whenever I came across the Atkins program and started eating a high animal protein ketogenic diet. And with that, I actually did lose body fat, and I put on quite a lot of muscle. In fact, that was right before my senior year. I was 6'4", I weighed 245. I was running, my vertical was 29 inches. My 40-yard dash time was 4.63. I would never have been able to maintain those types of strength and speed. I would have lost my athletic scholarship. I would have been very difficult for me to finish my degree had I stayed vegan. So the answer is yes, I tried it. It was a colossal failure. And yes, it was a well-planned vegan diet.
Gotcha. Okay. I got two more questions for you, and then Hopefully after that, we could do a small, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Maybe we could do a little intro to a crop death thing. And I think this conversation went great. And then because it went so well, if you guys agree, we could do a separate talk that focuses on crop deaths. But let me ask this question first, and then we can decide on that together.
Yeah, I gotta get going pretty soon. So
Okay.
I'm certainly happy. Like I didn't, if there was a talk about this was supposed to be crop deaths, like I apologize to people who were expecting that. I didn't know that that was a thing we're supposed to talk about.
Me and Garland usually talk about crop deaths, and then so I think between his people and my people, that's something that was expected. But you're right; it wasn't necessarily officially planned. So
Well,
don't worry about it.
It's all good. I'm happy to go into that, but like I do feel like it will open a can of worms, so to speak, and I would maybe just like to have a bit more time to go into
Michael, do you ever talk about crop deaths outside of, say, dealing with me?
Do I ever talk about crop deaths outside?
Yeah, like as a vegan, do you care about crop deaths?
Is it an issue to you at all? I mean, I'm not saying just like hypothetically is an issue, but what is an issue is something that people will include in their activism. Do you include crop deaths in your activism at all? And
wait,
can you point to an actual incident?
Wait, hold on. Don't answer that, please, Michael. Also, Michael, are you like me? Do you have 15 minutes left, or do you have to go before that? Do you have 10?
Yeah, I guess
10,
so.
10 minutes?
10's good.
Okay, sorry. But before you answer his question, I want to ask this last question, and then I'm not doing any more questions from people. And then I am curious to hear your answer to what Garland asked you about crops. So we got 2 questions here, and they're both for Garland.
Sorry, Carson, because I was just going to say, like, I would love to just go in, like, rather than go into it, I would love to just discuss it on a separate occasion if Garland's up for it, like, rather than just go 5 minutes into it where in order for me to answer that question, I'm going to need to tie it back into my ethics. I would just like
for you to give me a yes or no answer. That's all.
No, it's not a priority for me.
Okay. That's all we need to say.
Okay. So then I'll ask this, and then we'll say our goodbyes and hop off. I'm very curious about this because I got a 2-part question. But before I ask it, Garland, are you familiar with what bivalves are?
Yes.
Like oysters, mussels. Okay. So the first question that I'm going to read, because it ties into the second, you don't have to answer because you already have. And it's Angelo says, ask Garland, if it was absolutely proven that vegan diets are superior, would one be morally obligated to be vegan? And I think you essentially said that, correct? If it was proven?
Yeah. Hypothetically, it would be a no-brainer, but we live in the real world. And we're not herbivores. We don't have a functioning cecum. We're not eating cecotropes. So in the real world, it's like let's say if I could grow wings, would I consider flying to France? Sure,
I would
fly to France if I could grow wings, but I'm not going to grow wings, and so I mean I can answer the question.
Yeah,
how does it relate to the real world? It doesn't. But if that's the way the vegans want to. The game they want to play, that's fine.
Well, sometimes it's just good to know where somebody stands.
But at some point, you have to relate hypotheticals to the real world.
Yeah. Right? This one's closer to the real world, but you might not find this real world, but it's connected. Veganism Rising Unstoppable, he says. That's in his name. Says, question to Garland, let's presume that one cannot be healthy on a plant-based diet. If you could still consume bivalves to get those nutrients, would you become vegan? So if every bivalve gave you what you feel you need, would you think that that's the moral choice to do? I feel like it's pretty much the same answer, but I don't know if that affects it for you.
Well, hypothetically, I'd have to say yes. I mean, whatever diet is optimal for human health is what I would support. Okay.
Cool.
Now, if let's say hypothetically that glass marbles were the optimal diet for human health, would I support people eating glass marbles? If it was proven that glass marbles were optimal for human health, then I would support that. What if eating toenails?
Because the question
if eating our toenails was optimal for human health, but again, these are hypothetical questions that are not relevant to the real world.
The question wasn't, I don't think, at least my interpretation was, it wasn't like, would you support it? I think it was more getting at like, would you consider it to be a moral obligation?
I think that every human being has a moral obligation to eat a diet that's optimal to their health.
And
I
when
think I,
choosing between diets that are equally optimal, do you think that there's any moral obligation to reduce the harm or killing or anything else to animals that are
well,
sentient?
since you don't care about crop deaths, then you won't factor in the deaths that are caused by the crops that
Oh,
may
No,
he
have
just
been
means
I'm
cut.
you,
asking you.
you
I'm asking
specifically.
you.
The the crop agriculture causes more harm than animal agriculture, so I would have to choose the animal-based diet if both
Yeah.
were exactly equal in their harm.
Yeah, I think what Michael means is if with bivalves and plants, you could hypothetically get the same thing that you could get from animal products and plants. Would you say that the harm to the animals would make the more moral diet be the bivalves and plants, and not causing harm just for taste pleasure? I think
Like
you
I
already
said,
answered that, but yeah.
like I said, I would not care if it was, um, let's say it was poison ivy. If if a diet of poison ivy was ideal for optimal human health,
Hmm.
then I would choose to eat a diet consisting of 100% poison ivy.
Cool.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
but
matter which. I mean, you can mix and match bivalves,
that's
glass
not the question, though,
marbles.
right? Like the
Yeah,
question is
the
about
question
what.
is what you're trying to do, Michael, is you're trying to a gotcha, saying, well,
No,
then you must be vegan
no, I'm
because you
not trying to do that at all. The question is just, would you consider it a moral obligation if you were presented with an option that had less, um, like death, harm, suffering, whatever, for that reason? So, like, not would you eat it, but would you consider it to be a moral obligation? That's the difference. You've answered the question of would you eat it. I'm asking if you think it would be a moral
I
obligation.
think my again my position is that every person has a moral obligation to do what's best for their health.
Hmm.
And so whatever diet is optimally healthy in whatever hypothetical you want to paint, I don't care if it's glass marbles or plant-based, whatever diet in your hypothetical scenario would be optimal for human health would be morally
Right.
morally
But again,
morally
that's not the question. The question is, when presented with two diets that would get you to that optimal human health, one of them containing animal products and one of them containing bivalves or plants or whatever, would you opt for the one that causes the less harm to animals? As so they're both equal in the optimal health thing. It's just the one of them involves.
Oh, okay. I thought Michael was crazy, and I thought you already answered it, but now I get the detail he's saying. So yeah, he's saying that that it's the same. So it's not that the plants are better. It's that you could eat chicken and beef and plants and get the exact same. So would you say that even though they're equal, you would still choose the one that doesn't harm animals because there's a version that doesn't harm animals that is equally good for your health? Which you basically have answered, but not exactly. But yeah, so what do you think of that?
Okay, so what he's asking is two diets that are completely different but have the exact same health effects on the
Yep.
human body, but one causes less animal harm than the other. Would I choose the one that had the less animal harm?
Would you
Yeah, would it be
consider
a
it a moral obligation?
moral
Yeah.
obligation? Yeah.
Okay, I already said earlier that I do not believe that we should be harming animals
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Okay, so that would qualify as an unnecessary reason to harm animals if you had an equally optimal diet that didn't include them.
Does this diet that you're saying, does it require supplements?
Nope.
Yeah, let's say not.
Okay, so if the plant-based diet did not require any supplements, even B12, and the uh, and I've already told you that I tried veganism, So
Yeah.
I have already answered this question.
We'll just say
in
it's
5
just
or 6
we'll just say
different
it's
ways.
apples. In the hypothetical, it's just apples. You eat only apples. You don't have to eat anything else. No supplements. No nothing. And just in this magical hypothetical world, but with your brain and your thoughts on morals, it's not better than the meat and vegetation. It's equal, but the animals aren't being harmed in this case because these magical apples have no crop deaths. So I think you've already answered the question before, but yeah. So at
We
equal,
said not unnecessarily, and I'm just wondering if this
Yeah.
would fall into the category of unnecessary.
It's if we just leave it that narrow, then I would agree with you.
Cool.
But if
Yeah.
there's a in reality, the picture is much more broad.
oh yeah, it's not a
Totally.
reality thing. It's just
I mean,
it's just where your
it's-
morals
Yeah,
are.
the relevance of this question is really zero because
Yeah.
you've had to narrow down your
No,
hypothetical to
I don't think
get
it's
me
zero.
to
No,
get
no,
me
no.
to
What it's
endorse a
saying,
vegan
Garland, is
diet.
that
Well, hold on,
It's
Garland. I think you
such
think that
it's so fantastic.
you're used to vegan debates. Hold on. I think you're used to vegan gains and that kind of thing. He's just curious if you care about animals, and he's testing it in a couple different ways. There's no gotcha whatsoever. And I just think that's important to know.
I think
that Michael's just
what I believe is that veganism is harmful to humans, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it's harmful to animals. It's
Yeah.
harmful to the environment. It's destroying the soil. We're running out of topsoil. It removes carbon from the soil. It causes desertification. It's the driving force. Crop agriculture is the driving force behind climate change.
Yeah.
So
no, when having
regardless of what
conversations,
answer in some
Yeah.
wild hypothetical, the truth is that veganism is bad.
the reason for
Veganism
the
is
hypothetical
harmful.
is when having conversations with people, the more information you know, the easier it is to have to communicate. And so, like with you, I know that because of you telling me that you care about animals, you don't want them harmed unnecessarily. You only are okay with killing them because it's healthy for humans. With that information, then when we go into things like crop deaths at a different point or different topics, we can know where you stand. And I believe, Michael, you can let me know if I'm wrong, that Michael's just trying to learn more about you to know where to take
Can
the
I ask Michael a
conversation.
question? Can
Of
I
course.
ask Michael a question? If you were to find out that a meat-based diet compared to a vegan diet, or let's say a vegan diet causes 10 times more animal suffering and death than a meat-based diet,
Mhm.
would you stop being a vegan and stop trying to promote veganism and start
yeah.
eating meat again?
So I'll answer this, and this might trigger going into a deeper discussion, which we could probably roll into the next one. But I'm happy to answer.
Intent,
Probably
right?
not. Sorry.
Intent. You're going to bring up the negative rights. The negative
Yeah, well,
rights.
that's what I value, right? So if you changed in your scenario, if you changed it to say that there was more negative rights violations to
Okay,
sentient beings,
so when you
just
asked
let me
me,
finish, please. I like barely talked in the last half hour.
you're moving the. I just want to point out that you're moving the goalposts.
No, I'm answering your question. I'm
No,
just
you're
providing.
moving the goalposts. You are. You went from animal
Michael,
suffering
can you-
was a priority, and
Dude.
now it's rights.
Michael,
Now
you're
it's
totally
rights.
right.
Wait, I
But
went from what to what? What did I do?
Animal suffering to rights.
When did I go to animal suffering?
You were asking me about whether you're asking me if to choose between two diets that one causes. They're both optimally healthy, but one
Yeah.
causes more animal suffering and death than the other.
You know why I asked you that?
Yes, I do.
I asked you that. Well, okay, I'll tell you why anyway, because I think you might not. Is because I thought that was the relevant thing to you, was the suffering and death.
so, like to me and you, Garland, is the suffering part, and to Michael, it's the right. So,
Michael, if there's an ecosystem out there, like let's say, for instance, the right now, the palm oil industry. The palm oil industry is causing major deforestation. There is no animal feed.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
no livestock feed involved with palm. Okay, but they're cutting
Yeah,
down all these
Garland, though,
trees,
like
and it's
the alternative to
killing
palm
orangutans,
is one of the most
parrots.
efficiently grown crops of all of the
Wait,
replacement oils. It's one of the most efficient per hectare and per water gallon used to grow per calorie. I don't think it's the healthiest, but
So you're okay with killing animals and displacing rainforests
yeah,
and
I mean, you're like, I'm happy to go into this, but you still haven't let me answer your original question. So I don't know if you want me to, what you want me to answer right now.
no,
So just
what I
tell me
want
what
you
you need
to
to
answer,
answer.
what I want you to acknowledge is that when we go in there, when human beings go into these rainforests to clear rainforests for palm oil cultivation, they're killing animals and they're
Uh-huh.
burning down. They're slashing these down. They're scorching them. They're killing animals in order to grow palm oil.
Right.
And you're trying to justify that by saying that it's efficient. However,
Yeah.
isn't that a negative rights violation when you
wait,
go in there and you kill orangutans so you can grow palm oil?
Yeah, we're gonna get into the crop death thing
It's
here.
a
So,
yes or no question. Just
oh
answer
my
yes
gosh,
or no.
dude.
no. Hold on. I'm not going to let him answer it. Me and Michael,
Answer the question. I asked you a yes or no question
do you
because
feel
you
all right
That was the
answering
most
it?
complicated question.
Okay.
I've answered your questions in like 10 seconds. You answer in like 10 minutes. So
Hold
just
on.
what's the question? I'll answer it in 10 seconds.
Hold on.
So negative rights violations only matter if someone's going to eat the animal.
No. What?
Wait, hold on. Me and
No.
Michael
What you
both.
said.
That's your answer. No. In 1 second, I answered you. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Me and Michael both have to go. But I would love to answer your question, and if you're up for letting Michael clarify the details of his answer, without back and forths, I think it would be good if Michael answered it and I answered it, and then we save everything crop deaths for a future talk that I'm up for having as soon as possible. Are you cool with Michael answering it, even if it seems like he's moving the goalpost, which I don't think that's the case. I just think it's complicated. Can he answer it, and then can I answer it?
That's something I wanted to say before we even got started, is that it's time for vegans to stop using this "it's complicated" excuse whenever we start talking about crop deaths.
How
Okay.
simple was it for me to
No,
answer
no,
that for
no,
you?
no
And
no
how
more. It's
complicated is every
complicated.
answer you've
It's
given
not
on
an
this stream
excuse.
being
The fact
done?
that something's
Give me a
complicated
break.
is no longer an excuse. Do not use that excuse with me anymore.
Sorry, don't use an excuse that I need to clarify the nuance
No,
of my
that
position.
something's complicated.
You've used Garland, like every question I've asked you, you've wanted to give context and tell stories about your brother and the research you've done and everything and what the externalities of the situation are and the impacts on the environment.
Right,
Like,
right. But I don't just say it's complicated. Let's move
well,
on.
I didn't
I
move on.
explained
I was going to
myself.
explain, but you cut
He
me
was
off.
pointing.
If it's complicated, then explain the complications. Don't come up with something.
Yeah,
Just say,
I
"Oh,
wasn't
it's
done talking,
complicated."
Garland.
The
You cut me
complicated
off.
part was mostly I said that, but he said it about a crop death thing, which we just don't have time to get into now. So would you rather Michael not answer it because you feel like it's moving the goalpost, or do you want him to answer it without
I'm fine
conversation?
not answering and just doing this in a different stream. Leave a giant ass cliffhanger here.
Okay. So Michael's
Or if
not
you
going
want
to.
to answer, I'm happy to answer. If you want,
Which do you prefer?
He can't answer it without moving the goalpost. That's why.
Are you okay with him
No, I
answering
can't
it?
answer it. I'm just
Are you
telling you it's
okay
not a
with him
relevant
answering
thing for me.
it, even if it feels like he's moving the goalpost, or would you prefer him not to answer it if you think he's moving the goalpost?
I want to watch him move the goalpost. I want the audience
Okay.
to see it happen.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Ask me the question. Go.
What can you name the trait of those animals that are being killed for crop agriculture? Not just the crop protection, but the clearing of the land, the shooting of these animals, the burning of these animals. And I used palm cultivation as an example because right now it's a big issue. We're losing rainforest, and there's endangered species that are being driven into extinction because
The
they're
question.
being killed in such high numbers. Why is that not a negative rights violation that you'd be concerned about?
Okay, you asked sort of two different questions mixed in there. There was a name the trait, and then you asked why is that not a relevant rights violation. I'll answer both. The trait is severity of the negative rights violation. I don't think all negative rights violations are equal. So there's a difference in negative rights violations that I attribute to animal ag, breeding and bringing into existence, and like factory farming, torturing, killing animals. I think that's a more severe rights violation than the rights violations of like claiming property and defending the property. So that's my answer. I think that answers both.
Okay.
And I know you're going to have like comments back to that, but like maybe is this cool if we save the back?
Yeah,
and
let's.
It's a morally bankrupt position to take.
Well,
And that's fine, but let's save that.
Do you feel like I answered your question at least, though?
Land, and then murder
Yeah.
the animals that come back on that land, and then plead protection.
Yeah. So Garland, what I'd encourage you to do is go and show
veganism is a lie, and
okay.
and
Now you're just
these excuses that you're using are morally bankrupt. There's no morals there. It's it's mostly just
we just have to
towards mankind.
We just have to go over it. We just have to go over it at a different time where we have the entire conversation be crop deaths, and you'll know his answer, and we can go just from there. We just both got to hop off here. But are you okay with me doing a 30-second answer of your question that you had for Michael? You said in the hypothetical, kind of reversing the one that you had, if we found out that it costs like 10 times the amount of suffering and death for doing the crops than the animal stuff, would you stop being vegan and promote non-veganism or whatever? And my answer to that, I don't know my exact number, but something like that. If it was, especially the suffering part, if it was 10 times or more the amount of suffering to animals than something like any form of making suffering to animals with like farming animals, then I would promote that if it was equally healthy, if it was healthy for us humans, because I agree with you completely. We should care about our optimal health first, but I would try to convince the world to become pure carnivores, which would be vegan. That would be the current vegan approach until the future veganism can go back to something else. But whatever is the least harmful to animals is what veganism is in my mind. And therefore, pure carnivore eating would be more vegan than eating the crops in your hypothetical. So that's my answer. But I think we should go over all that and what you and Michael just talked about in a really badass crop deaths big conversation.
Well, Michael doesn't care about crop deaths.
I didn't say that. You're strawmanning me.
He cares less than I care, but I think he cares. But can we say goodnight? Can we call it good?
I said it's not a priority. Because you asked for a one-word yes or no answer, so I wasn't allowed to clarify my answer. We can go into it, Garland.
Something's not a priority. If something
doesn't mean you don't care about it. Of course, it doesn't mean you don't care about it.
If something's not a priority, that speaks for itself.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Garland, if you had a choice to kill me or like your partner, who would you kill?
No, if you say something's not a priority, then that's something that's not a priority.
Yeah, you save
that speaks for itself.
Saving Carson's life or saving the life of your family. You prioritize your family, obviously, but you don't. It doesn't mean you don't care about Carson.
No, that doesn't mean that. No, but I can't say that Carson. Look, I asked you if you had spent any of your activism trying to reduce crop deaths, and you said no, it's not a priority. But for me, I would try to save both my family and Carson. I wouldn't say, because my family is a priority, I'm going to let Carson drown.
Move the goalposts.
I'm going to save both of them.
You would move the goalposts of the hypothetical.
No, I just told you the truth. You're trying to paint a false dichotomy that you have to choose one or the other, but that's not the real world. The real world is that I can save my family and Carson.
I am super grateful for the saving me. I think there's too much tension going on because it's super late. We've been going 3 hours. For the most part, I would say 98% of this conversation has been great. I hope everybody, all three of us, are on board for another conversation soon, all on crop deaths. There's too little time to delve into this last little bit that I think we're trying to do. Can we say goodnight and that we love each other and stuff? Okay, love you guys.
Well, Michael hates my guts.
But no, not at all. No, man. This
There is one thing that's clear, and I think we can all agree to this. The three of us are more vegan than 99%, than 90% of humans out there. You are more vegan than your...
I disagree. I think that, let's say that there's a 7-year-old girl out there that's eating a hot dog. She eats hot dogs every day. She does not have the intent to harm animals. She's eating a diet that's being provided to her. So she doesn't have the intent that she wants to harm animals. She loves animals. She sees a bunny rabbit and she gets all giggly and just crazy about animals.
No, you're right. Knowledge goes into it.
Most meat eaters have a high level of care and affection for animals. Most meat eaters they don't like the concentrated feedlot model. They would rather purchase their meat from someone like me. They just don't have access.
And that's why I want all of us vegans and non-vegans to fight together to change this and get rid of factory farming, and it'll be great. But I also want to say goodnight, and I love you guys. And let's talk soon, okay?
Thanks. See you later.
Okay.
Guys. See you, Judy.
Good night.
See you, Harrison.
Bye.